10 years of marriage. Every year, I gave my father-in-law 200,000 yuan.
But every single time, all he gave me in return was a worthless, dying orchid.
Its leaves were always withered, and the soil was rock solid. My wife said it was just a hobby he'd taken up, and told me not to look down on it.
I didn't say anything, so those 10 pots of orchids ended up piling up on our balcony.
But this year, my company went bankrupt.
I was left drowning in debt.
I couldn't get a single penny back from my father-in-law. While packing up the house,
I gave all those worthless orchids to my neighbor, old Zhang.
3 days later, old Zhang knocked on my door. His hands were shaking as he said, "Brother,
you need to see what's inside these pots."
The moment I dug through the dirt, I was completely stunned.
10 years of marriage. My name is Xuan. Every year, on the second day of the Lunar New Year,
I would always prepare a thick envelope stuffed with 200,000 yuan in cash
and handed directly to my father-in-law.
Over 10 years, that amounted to exactly 2 million yuan.
But Yao would only give me a cold, indifferent nod.
Then, he'd turn around and walk into his precious greenhouse. A few minutes later, he would bring out a pot of orchids. The leaves were withered and yellow, the roots were shriveled and dry,
and the soil in the pot had hardened into solid clumps. Take it. It's just a small token of my appreciation.
His tone was dismissive, as if he were brushing off an annoying subordinate. My wife, Zhou Jing, would always try to smooth things over.
小俺，你大就死赌停了。
He grew it with his own hands, so don't look down on it. But what could I say? All I could do was smile, accept it, and say, "Thank you, Dad." The first year, I thought it was a test from my father-in-law. By the third year,
I thought it was just some eccentric preference. By the 5th year,
I started to realize it was a flat-out humiliation. And after 10 years, 10 half-dead pots of orchids cluttered our tiny balcony. My own parents have been frugal their whole lives. Whenever I gave them money, they'd always say they had enough
and tell me to keep it for myself.
But my father-in-law? When he took 200,000, he didn't even bat an eye. He lives in the luxury apartment I bought for him, drives the Audi A6 I gifted him, and his way of paying me back? A cheap, worthless orchid. When Zhou Jing's brother got married, I paid for his house in full. When Zhou Jing's mother got sick, I paid for every single cent of her VIP hospital room.
That family is like a bottomless pit.
And I'm the idiot who keeps filling it. I actually thought my sacrifices would buy me some genuine gratitude until a month ago,
when my company's funding chain snapped. Overnight, I went from being CEO Shu to a heavily indebted, broke loser.
Non-stop debt collection calls from the bank.
Angry suppliers banging on my door.
It was all suffocating me. I sold my car, sold the company's equipment, but I still couldn't fill that massive black hole. The only asset we had left was the house we're currently living in. The gang issued a final ultimatum.
If we don't pay 800,000,
they're going to auction our house off.
Zhou Jing was so worried she couldn't sleep a wink.
She held me tight and whispered, "Shoot na, maybe we should try asking my parents?"
That 2 million could at least help us through this emergency.
Yes, 2 million. Although Zhou Guwa never openly said he was keeping it for us, deep down, I always knew that was our hard-earned money.
Our safety net for the future.
And now, we needed it more than ever. I dialed my father-in-law's number. Hearing his familiar, calm voice on the other end, I took a deep breath. "Dad, my company is in deep trouble."
Before I could even finish my sentence, he cut me off.
I got it. Just 3 cold, lifeless words. And then, the line went dead. I stood there, completely frozen, unable to move. For the longest time, Zhou Jing tried to comfort me, saying, "Dad's probably just busy. Let's just go over there in person tomorrow." Clinging to that last, desperate shred of hope in my heart, I followed Zhou Jing back to her parents' house. When we pushed the door open, my father-in-law was casually pruning a new plant in the living room without even lifting his eyes. My mother-in-law walked out of the kitchen, and the moment she saw us, the smile vanished from her face. "Oh, where brings you back today?" The cold distance and suspicion in her voice stabbed into my heart like a needle. Before I could even speak, Zhou Li's brother, Zhou Fu, walked out of his room, looking completely annoyed. "Sis, brother-in-law, what are you guys doing here? Mom and Dad already said all the family money is saved for my business. We can't spare a single cent." I stared at him. This was the brother-in-law I had bought a wedding house for, whose car loans I was still paying off every single month. My heart sank, inch by inch, into a cold abyss. That day, I stood in my father-in-law's house for a whole hour.
Zhou Kowa didn't look me in the eye even once.
He just kept fussing over his plans, as if I and my crumbling family were as worthless as the dirt in his yard. Back home, I collapsed onto the sofa. On the balcony, those 10 pots of orchids swayed gently in the evening breeze. Their yellowing leaves seemed to be silently mocking my 10 years. 10 years of absolute foolishness.
Suddenly, a frantic banging echoed from the front door.
I knew it. Those debt collectors were back. They pounded on the door like they were trying to tear it down.
修要 open the door.
"You owe us money, and you're going to pay. That's the way of the world. If you don't open up right now,
We'll find our own way in.
Zhou Jing's face turned deathly pale with fear.
Get behind me.
I opened the door. Several burly men were crowding the doorway.
The bald guy leading them shoved a debt notice right in my face.
Suan had better pay up today.
Otherwise, we might just have to give this apartment of yours a little makeover.
I clenched my fists. My voice was hoarse. Give me 3 more days.
3 days?
The bald guy sneered.
Fine. 3 days from now, it's 1 million, principal plus interest.
If you're short by a single cent, I'll take one of your legs. With that, they left. The room was left in a dead silence.
就尽快。去玩。
What do we do? Are we really going to end up sleeping on the streets?
I looked at her.
My last shred of hope rested on what they called family. The next day, I didn't tell Zhou Jing. I went to my father-in-law's house alone.
This time, I didn't want to go through anyone else.
I just wanted to talk to Zhou Guohua.
The man I'd called dad for 10 years. Face to face.
My mother-in-law opened the door. Seeing me, she blocked the doorway as if she'd just seen a plague. What are you doing here again? We don't have any money.
Mom, I need to talk to Dad about something. I managed to squeeze out a weak smile.
He's not. Before she could finish, Zhou Guohua's stern voice boomed from inside. Let him in.
I upped into the living room,
Zhou Guohua was sitting in a traditional armchair.
rolling 2 walnuts in his palm, clicking them together.
He looked at me, his eyes cold, as if staring at a total stranger. Spit it out. I still have to head to the flower and bird market. I took a deep breath, trampled whatever dignity I had left, and begged. Dad,
I'm really at the end of my rope. Can you please return that 2 million to me first?
once I get back on my feet, I'll repay your kindness. Double.
Zhou Guohua stopped rolling the walnuts in his hand. He looked up,
A look of sheer contempt in his eyes.
小诺 did you get something made down?
What? My heart tightened.
Let me ask you, that money you gave me over those 10 years, what exactly was it?
It was money to show my respect to you, as my elder.
Exactly.
Zhou Guohua leaned back in his chair. Since it was a respectful gift, then it was given to me. And once something is given to me, it's mine. Since when does anyone ask an elder to return a respectful gift? The blood rushed to my head instantly. Dad, that wasn't a small amount. That was 2 million.
Is 2 million a lot?
What? He asked, completely unbothered.
Back when you ran your company.
You made way more than that in a year, didn't you? What? Just because you're down on your luck now? You want to claw that money back from an old man like me?
My mother-in-law stood beside him, chiming in. Suan,
You need to have a conscience. When you were doing well, our family benefited so much from your success.
and now that you're in trouble, you want to drag us down with you?
Not a chance.
I stared at their disgusting, greedy faces.
My entire body going numb. That wasn't your money. That was money I worked my fingers to the bone to earn.
I did it for Zhou Jing.
And for all the sacrifices I made for this family.
Zhou Guohua sneered. You married my daughter.
Isn't all of this exactly what you're supposed to do? A man who can't even support his own family. Tokli has no right to stand here and yell at us. Every single word he said felt like a knife twisting in my heart. Suddenly, I remembered something. Fine, even if that money was a respectful gift to you, then what about the orchids you sent back to me every year? What were those? Zhou Guohua put down the walnuts. He slowly stood up, walked over, and stopped right in front of me. Those were my return gifts.
He patted my shoulder, his voice dripping with undisguised arrogance.
I, Zhou Guohua, never take something for nothing. You gave me money, and I gave you answers.
We are even now.
Those words, "we are even," struck me like a bolt of lightning,
Jolting me completely awake.
So, in his eyes, our relationship was nothing but a transaction. A ridiculous deal where I traded $2 million for 10 worthless pots of orchids.
I stared at this elder whom I had respected for 10 years.
There wasn't a single shred of guilt on his face, only a cold, self-righteous indifference. I finally understood.
There is no affection here.
No family. Only a cold, hard wall, built on money and self-interest. I turned around and walked out, one slow step at a time. Behind me, my mother-in-law's sharp, mocking voice rang out.
If you don't have what it takes, don't pretend to be a big shot.
Look at you now. Serves you right. I didn't look back, and I didn't say a word. As I stepped out of that door,
The bright sunlight stung my eyes.
10 years of marriage, 10 years of giving my all I got in return was a cold, hard wall.
I laughed. Laughed until tears streamed down my face.
Back home, I stared at those 10 pots of orchids on the balcony. They seemed to be passing a ruthless judgment on me, judging my foolishness and my naivety. I picked up my phone and called old Zhang, who lives across the hall. He is a retired gardener who loves tending to plants and flowers. Uncle Zhang, are you home? I don't want the orchids on my balcony anymore. If you like them, Feel free to come and take them. It's time to clear out these things that have taken up my balcony for 10 years.
Old Sound arrived in no time.
He was carrying a small basket. His face lit up with a pleasant surprise.
Jiang, are you really giving me all the orchids?
Yeah, all of them. My voice was completely flat.
Uncle John paced around the balcony, inspecting them pot by pot.
He couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. Oh my, these are incredibly rare breeds. Sure, they haven't been cared for very well,
But the stock itself is genuine. Premium Jinlan.
Xiaolan, where did you get these?
They don't look like anything you can just buy on the market.
I leaned against the balcony railing and lit a cigarette. My father-in-law gave them to me. Well, then your father-in-law must be a real master.
Uncle John carefully lifted one of the pots. It's just, this soil is terrible. It's completely compacted. You need to repot them immediately. I blew out a ring of smoke. Uncle John, if you like them, just take them all.
Don't be polite. Oh, I couldn't do that.
Uncle John waved his hands quickly. These are too valuable. I can't just take them for nothing. How about this? I'll give you $500 a pot.
That's $5,000 for all 10. What do you say?
I let out a bitter laugh. $5,000. Something I spent $2 million to get is now worth a measly $5,000 in someone else's eyes.
It's fine. No need, Uncle John. Just take them. Thus look at it as helping me throw out the trash. With that, I stubbed out my cigarette and turned back into the living room. I didn't want to cast another single glance at those orchids.
To me, they represented nothing but the absolute humiliation and stupidity of my entire past 10 years.
Uncle John didn't push any further.
He made trip after trip, carrying all 10 pots of orchids back to his own place.
Instantly, the balcony was completely bare. The bright sunlight pouring in was almost blinding, but it felt brighter and more spacious than ever before.
A piece of my heart went empty along with it.
Yet, it didn't hurt. Instead, a wave of pure relief washed over me. She stared at the empty balcony and froze.
Shuan,
Where are the flowers? Where are the flowers?
I replied flatly. I gave them away. How could you just give them away?
My dad planted those with his own hands.
she panicked. But I just stared at her.
There wasn't a single shred of warmth in my eyes.
Jojing, starting today, don't you ever bring up your father to me again.
She seemed about to say something, but seeing the icy look in my eyes,
She swallowed her words. For the next 3 days, Jojing and I barely spoke. She tried to talk to me.
saying she would go beg her parents one more time.
I simply told her, no need.
If the house is gone, we can rent another one.
If the money is gone, we can make it back.
But some things, once they're gone, are gone forever.
On the afternoon of the 3rd day,
I was online, looking for a single room to rent temporarily,
when the doorbell rang. I thought the debt collectors were back.
and felt a sudden surge of irritation.
But when I opened the door, Uncle John was standing there. He was dripping with sweat, and his hands were trembling slightly. He was clutching a black plastic bag, and it looked incredibly heavy.
Little shoe.
He gasped, panting heavily.
His eyes wide with shock.
Uncle John, what's wrong?
I asked, feeling confused.
You can come in here. He pulled me inside the house and quickly shut the door behind him. He dropped the heavy black plastic bag onto the coffee table with a loud thud. Look, you have to see what was in those flower pots.
I was stunned.
The flower pots. Uncle Chung's voice was shaking. I was repotting those orchids today and changing the soil.
When I tipped out the very first pot, I knew something was off.
The bottom of the pot was way too heavy. Trembling, he untied the plastic bag. With a loud rustle,
A pile of small blocks wrapped tightly in oil paper tumbled out.
along with them were several bank cards, also wrapped in oil paper. My breath caught in my throat. I crouched down. My hands tremble as I pick up one of the oil packages. It's heavy. Surprisingly heavy. I slowly peel away the layers, one by one. As the final layer of oil paper is pulled back, a brilliant flash of gold stings my eyes.
It's gold. Small gold bars.
Every single one is stamped with the bank's logo, and it's weighed in grams. Trembling, I grab another package.
I tear it open. More gold bars.
There are 10 oil packages in total.
And inside, every single one is a 50-gram gold bars.
My mind goes completely blank. My ears are ringing. What is going on here?
Old Jiang hands me another slip of paper.
It was tucked away at the very bottom. It's slightly wrinkled. This was wrapped up with the first bank card, he says. I take the note and unfold it. Scrawled across it is Ogo Hua's familiar, bold handwriting. There's only a single line of text and a 6-digit number. For Xuan, the password is your birthday. My head starts pounding. It feels like thousands of bees are swarming inside my skull.
The icy touch of the gold and the familiar handwriting on the paper.
Form a paradox I cannot comprehend at all. How could someone who, just days ago, coldly told me that we were completely even, think he's just a massive fortune in this way?
Seeing me look completely lost, old Zhang gently pats me on the shoulder.
Jiashu, are you Are you okay?
I snap out of it. I look at him, my lips trembling, but no sound comes out. How am I supposed to explain any of this to him? I haven't even figured it out myself. I take a deep, shaky breath and force myself to calm down. I steady myself against the table and stand up. I walk over to old Chang and bow deeply to him.
Uncle Chang, thank you.
This bow comes from the very depths of my heart. If it weren't for him, I probably would have thrown these 10 pots of orchids out like trash. The secret, buried deep inside, I might have never known it for the rest of my life. I would have lived forever in resentment, consumed by the way my father-in-law humiliated and abandoned me until I was completely crushed by my debts. Uncle Zhang quickly held me up.
Oh, come on.
What are you doing, son? We're neighbors. Helping each other out is just the right thing to do. He looked at the gold bars on the table, his face filled with lingering shock. Thank goodness I was a bit nosy today and decided to repot that flower. If you really just kept growing it as a regular plant, what a massive loss that would have been. I pulled 1 gold bars from the pile and shoved it into Uncle Zhang's hand.
Uncle Chang, you absolutely have to take this, no matter what.
Uncle Zhang reacted as if he'd been burned and instantly threw the gold bars back onto the table. No, no, no! Shu, this is absolutely out of the question. This belongs to your family. I can't take a single cent of it. His voice was resolute, without a shred of hypocrisy. An honorable man values wealth, but only if it's earned fair and square. This money isn't mine. If I took it, I wouldn't be able to rest easy. Looking at his honest, anxious face, a wave of warmth surged through my heart. When my so-called family had pushed me to the absolute brink, it was an outsider, a mere neighbor, who showed me the greatest kindness and support. I stopped pushing and said solemnly, Uncle Zhang,
I, Xiu will never forget what you did for me today.
if you ever need anything in the future, as long as it's within my power, I'll do whatever it takes, no matter the cost. Only then did Uncle Zhang smile and patted my arm. All right, don't make it sound so dramatic. Knowing that you have a way out now is enough to put my mind at ease. I'll head back now. Go on, you should take good care of these things. He closed the door behind him as his footsteps slowly faded away. Now, it's just me in this table of cold, silent gold, along with those mysterious bank cards. I sink back onto the couch, picking up the slip of paper with my birthday written down as the passcode. Zhou Guo's handwriting is sharp and powerful, carving deep into the paper, just like the man himself. He always carried this absolute, unquestionable authority. But between these lines, there's a raw, complex emotion I never noticed before. The words for Xuan make it clear. This money was meant for me from the very beginning. But why did he do it this way? Why, when I was at the absolute peak of my success, could he answer my $200,000 in cash with a withered orchid? And why, when I hit rock bottom, when I needed help the most, did he push me away with the most brutal, venomous words? He threw me into hell, only to hand me the keys to heaven himself. What is he actually trying to do? I just don't get it. The last 10 years flashed through my mind like a black and white silent movie. Every single year, on the 2nd day of the Lunar New Year, I would proudly hand him an envelope full of cash, and he'd take it with a cold, blank face, turning around to hand me a worthless, dying orchid. Zhou Ling would try to ease the tension, while my mother-in-law and Zhou Hu watched us silently, observing everything. 10 years, over and over again. I always thought it was just a one-sided cycle of greed and humiliation. But no. Everything is shrouded in a thick, suffocating fog. I reach out and pick up one of the bag cards. It's brand new. Looks like it was just issued recently. I pull out my phone, my hands shaking as I log into the banking app. I type in the card number and that 6-digit passcode I know by heart. My birthday. The screen loads, and the moment the account balance pops up, my heart literally stops. The long string of zeros is so overwhelming, it makes my head spin. I carefully count the digits. 2 million. A whole 2 million. Not a single penny missing. Panic-stricken, I quickly check the second card. Another 2 million. The third card. The fourth. There are 5 cards in total. Every single one of these cards has exactly $2 million in it. $10 million. Plus those 10-50-gram gold bars on the table. To today's gold prices, they're worth over $200,000. Which means Zhou Guo didn't just return every single penny of the $2 million I gave him over the last 10 years. He somehow managed to multiply that money 5-fold. How is this even possible? He's just a retired old man. He spends his days tending to his plants and flowers. Where on earth did he get $10 million? And if he had that kind of money all along, why did he make me pay the full price for Zhou Hao's apartment when he got married? Why, when my mother-in-law got sick, could he still demand that I cover her medical bills? Why is he living in the house I bought? Driving the car I gave him. Why acting like he's completely entitled to it? One mystery after another binds me like tight chains. I feel like I've been trapped in a massive game of chess, and from start to finish, I've just been a blind pawn on the board. Right then. The stitches? It might about to be the difference. The sound of a key turning in the lock echoed. Zhou was back. The moment she walked in, she saw the blank look on my face and the blinding gold piled on the coffee table. She froze instantly in the entryway.
Suan, what is this?
Zhou face was a map of shock and disbelief. She rushed over, staring at the gold bars on the coffee table, and then at the bank cards, and then back at me. Her eyes were filled with utter confusion. Where did all this come from? How do we have these things in our house? I didn't answer her right away. I just stared at her in silence, staring at the woman who had shared my bed for 10 years. I wanted to find even the slightest hint of guilt or knowledge on her face, but there was nothing. Her shock was real. Her confusion was genuine. She had absolutely no idea. My heart sank. It seemed Jogoa had kept everyone in the dark with this scheme, including his most beloved daughter. I picked up the slip of paper and handed it to Zhou. Take a look at this. Zhou took the slip of paper. The pass, with just one glance, her face went pale. This is my dad's handwriting. She looked up. See him? Her eyes filled with even more confusion. Give this to Shunan. The password is your birthday. What on earth is going on? I told her the entire story of how old Zhang discovered the secret in the flower pot, from start to finish. From how I gave the flower pot away,
头着酱，闹婷浪纳多。
and finally, to us finding these gold bars and bank cards together. Zhou listened in utter disbelief, covering her mouth. She couldn't utter a single word for the longest time. No, that's impossible. How could my dad have... She muttered to herself, clearly in a state of deep shock. After a long silence, her eyes welled up with tears and began to stream down her face. But this time, it wasn't out of despair. It was from a wave of sheer relief and joy. She threw her arms around me, her voice cracking with emotion. This is wonderful, Xuan. We're saved. We don't have to sell the house anymore. And your company is saved too. He was completely swept up in the euphoria of having their crisis averted. But I couldn't bring myself to feel even a shred of joy. I gently pushed her away, my gaze as cold as ice. Zhou, do you really think this is just about the money now? She froze. What do you mean? Your father. My father-in-law, Mr. Zhou Gohua. Why did he do this? I asked, emphasizing every single word, my voice trembling under a massive wave of suppressed fury. He clearly had all this money, yet he stood by and watched me get cornered and threatened at my own door over a debt of 800,000, but clearly saved every single penny of my money. Yet when I practically begged him on my knees, he used the nastiest, most vicious words to humiliate me, telling me we were even... He let me look like a total fool, letting you and your brother scream at me, letting everyone mock me and call me a useless loser, a worthless piece of trash. He trampled my dignity into the dirt and crushed it to pieces, only to use someone else to throw that money back in my face. You tell me, why? Why did he do that? Every word I spoke was like a heavy sledgehammer, slamming straight into Zhou heart. The joy on her face slowly drained away, replaced by a pale, helpless look of sheer panic. I didn't know. My dad, he must have had his reasons. Reasons? I sneered. What kind of damn reasons require torturing someone who genuinely cared about him? I stood up and began grabbing the things on the table. I swept the gold bars and bank cards straight into that black plastic bag. Zhou watched me, trembling with anxiety.
Suan,
What are you doing? We're going to your house, I said, staring at her. My eyes were dead serious. Or rather, we're going to see Mr. Jogoa. I have money now. I have my pride back. And now I finally have the right to demand some real answers. I want to look him dead in the eye and ask him, what on earth did he take me for during these past 10 years?
究竟说的.
She knew that this time, I was absolutely furious. This wasn't just some petty family drama anymore. This was about a man's dignity and 10 years of selfless devotion. She didn't even try to stop me. She just silently grabbed her coat and followed me out of the house. On the way to my father-in-law's place, neither of us said a word. The silence in the car was so heavy, it was suffocating. I stepped on the gas, driving dangerously fast, as the rage inside me burned hotter and hotter. Soon, the massive luxury apartment that I had paid for with my own money came into view. Clutching the heavy black plastic bag, I stood there with Zhou and rang the doorbell. The one who opened the door was still my mother-in-law, Li Yumi. The moment she saw us, especially when her eyes landed on me, her face instantly twisted with disgust and suspicion. What are you doing here again? Didn't we make ourselves clear? Our family doesn't have a single penny for you. She blocked the doorway like she was guarding against a thief, refusing to let us in. I completely ignored her. Instead, I raised my eyes. looking right past her shoulder.
Stared at the figure, sitting in the armchair in the living room.
Zhou Kuwa was still rolling those 2 walnuts in his hand, as if absolutely nothing outside had anything to do with him. I shoved past my mother-in-law, who was blocking the door, and barged right inside. Stumbling backward from my shove, Liu Yumi shrieked, "Are you out of your mind?
Zhou, how dare you lay a hand on me?"
Zhu Hao also rushed out of his room, pointing right at my face and snarling, "Hey, Sue, do you have a death wish? How dare you come to our house and cause trouble?"
I didn't even spare them a glance.
My eyes were locked entirely on that old man sitting there, as solid as a mountain. I walked right up to the coffee table in front of him
And slammed the black plastic bag heavily onto the surface.
with a loud crash. I dumped everything out of the bag. 10 shining gold bars and 5 bank cards scattered all over a pile of greaseproof paper. The living room fell dead silent in an instant.
Liu Yumo's screech got choked back down her throat, and Zhou Hao swearing cut off mid-sentence.
Both of their eyes glued themselves to the gold on the table, practically popping right out of their sockets.
It was a display of raw, completely unmasked greed.
Only Zhou Guohua remained still.
His hands rolling the walnuts paused for just a split second.
He slowly looked up,
His cloudy yet sharp eyes fixing upon me.
There wasn't a trace of surprise on his face, as if he had anticipated all along that I would come back. Meeting his gaze, I squeezed the words out through my teeth. "Dad, don't you think you owe me an explanation?"
My voice was quiet, but heavy.
But in the dead silence of the living room, it sounded incredibly
Clear. Zhou Hao and Liu Yume finally tore their eyes away from the gold bar
And stared blankly at Zhou Guohua.
Their eyes were filled with a shock and confusion, even deeper than mine. It was obvious that they too had been kept completely in the dark.
Zhou Hao's mouth twitched,
As if he wanted to ask something, but a sharp, warning glare from Zhou Kuwa shut him right up. Liu Yumi's face was also a messy mix of utter confusion and raw greed.
Kuwa.
What is all this?
This gold.
Zhou Guohua completely ignored her. He slowly set down the walnuts he was rolling in his hands, making a sharp clacking sound. His eyes never once left mine, stare at me with a gaze as deep and dark as an ancient well, leaving me unable to read him at all. So, you know, his voice was incredibly calm, as if repeated to asking about some trivial, everyday thing. And what exactly should I know? I shot back, the rage in my chest boiling over once again.
All I know
Is that I've been a complete fool. Fade by you, for 10 whole years. Zhou Jing stood right beside me, gently tugging at my sleeve, silently telling me to calm down. But how could I calm down?
纠口啊，这是录的你吗？
His lips curling into a strange, unreadable smile.
10 years. You think that's a long time?
He stood up slowly, hopped over to the coffee table,
And picked up a gold bars, weighing it in his hand.
Suan, let me ask you something. If I'd have taken your $200,000 back then, and then told you, don't worry, I'm keeping this money safe for you, what do you think would have happened? I froze, not understanding where he was going with this. Without waiting for my answer, he kept talking. Let me tell you exactly what would have happened. He swept his gaze across his useless son and his greedy wife. Within 3 days, your mother would make up 100 excuses about how someone in her family got sick and desperately needed money.
Within 5 days,
Zhou Hao was kneeling right in front of me.
Begging me to fund some highly profitable golden opportunity he just found, demanding I give him the money to invest. That $200,000 wouldn't have lasted a month in my hands. $2 million over 10 years. Do you really think there would be a single penny left for you? His words felt like a heavy sledgehammer, slamming down on my heart.
It was a brutal slap to the faces of Liu Yumi and Zhou Hao.
Their faces instantly flushed with shame and anger, their eyes darting away in guilt, unable to look Zhou Guohua in the eye, because they knew every single word he said was the absolute truth. Zhou Guohua let out a cold snort and tossed the gold bars back onto the table. Cash is the most unreliable thing in this world. It slips away in an instant because of human greed and stupidity.
so I turned that cash into something concrete.
He pointed to the gold bars on the table. Every year, the moment I got your $200,000, I went straight to the bank the next day to convert it into gold. Then I hid it all in a place only I could find. As for those cards,
He picked up one of the bank cards.
I'm just an old man with no real talents. Aside from playing chess with my old buddies, I did a little research on the stock market.
Over the last 10 years, I used your principal to make a modest profit.
I rounded it up to a nice, clean figure and deposited it in here for you. My mind went completely blank. So, that was his plan all along. He wasn't trying to take from me.
He was protecting this fortune for me, Wei Shoujing, in the only way he knew how.
Think of earning it from the greed of his own wife and son.
But I still couldn't understand.
Then why did you treat me like that? My voice shook with emotion. Why did you have to say such cruel, hurtful things when I was at my absolute lowest? Zhou Guohua sat back down in his armchair, kicking up his teacup and gently blowing on the steam.
Because if I hadn't done that,
how would you ever see the true colors of the people sleeping right next to you? His voice isn't loud,
Yet, it carries the force of 1,000 armies,
and you were on top of the world. They acted like your loving family.
falling over you in every way possible.
Spending your money without a single shred of guilt.
But the moment you fall from grace, they turn into blood-sucking parasites, desperate to drain your very last drop of blood before kicking you straight to the curb.
I had to let you fall.
And make sure you hit where it hurts the most, because only then can you see people for who they really are, who is truly there to lift you up, and who is just waiting to kick you while you're down. He raises his eyes. Think.
And stares at me with an intense, burning gaze.
The daughter of Zhou Hua cannot marry a blind fool who can't see people's true colors. And I won't hand my fortune over to an idiot who doesn't even realize he's surrounded by wolves.
That humiliation was a show for them.
And a wake-up call. For you, it was the most important lesson of your life. His words hit me like a lightning bolt,
leaving me standing frozen on the spot.
completely thunderstruck. It turns out these past 10 years weren't some ridiculous business deal at all. It was a master plan.
A 10-year-long game, personally orchestrated by my father-in-law.
Designed to test our true character and to protect our entire future.
He used a nearly brutal method to toughen me up,
While keeping me safe the entire time.
Using nothing but shabby, broken orchids, he hid a shocking, earth-shattering secret. And all along, I was the one at the center of his master plan.
I turned my gaze toward Lu Yumi and Zhou.
Both of their faces are as pale as sheets, looking as though they've been stripped completely naked and dragged right out into the harsh light of day.
Every single disguise,
Every dirty scheme
has instantly crumbled into a pathetic joke.
9号碰起的纯蹦零品格啊，教过货。
his lips quivering as he stammers. Dad, you. How could you scheme against us like this?
Scheme against you? Jogora slowly set down his teacup.
He let out a cold, mocking laugh.
If I really wanted to scheme against you, you wouldn't even have a roof over your heads right now.
The house I bought for you, whose name is on the deed?
The car you drive,
Under whose name is it registered?
have you two not taken enough from Cian over all these years? I only stepped in because I refused to let you destroy the very foundation of this family. He suddenly slammed his hand onto the table.
His voice was thunderous, his face pale with fury.
Both of you, get the hell back to your rooms and stay there until you've reflected on what you've done.
Lu Zhumi and Zhou Hu 穿蹦from横的口, utterly terrified by his roar.
They didn't dare to utter another single word.
They slunk back to their rooms, with their tails between their legs. Only the three of us were left in the living room.
Zhou Gawa's intense aura slowly softened.
He looked into my eyes, and in his gaze, I saw a flicker of warmth and exhaustion that I had never seen before.
Shuan, do you understand now?
I looked at him. This elderly man, whose hair at his temples had already turned gray.
In that single moment, all the resentment and humiliation of the past 10 years completely vanished.
In its place rose a flood of incredibly complex emotions. Shock, deep guilt, and above all, a profound sense of reverence.
I walked over to him.
My knees buckled, and I dropped straight to my knees. Dad,
I was wrong.
This kneel was something I did of my own free will.
it had nothing to do with my pride. It was solely out of respect for this man's 10 long years of silent endurance, his fierce protection, and his painful sacrifices.
Jogowa's body visibly shuddered.
He didn't immediately reach down to pull me up.
Instead, he quietly accepted this deep gesture of respect from me.
After a long, quiet moment, he finally let out a long, heavy sigh.
There was a sense of comfort in that sigh, weariness, and a profound sense of a heavy burden finally being lifted.
He walked over, and using those calloused yet incredibly strong hands, he gently pulled me up from the floor.
Good boy. Stand up.
For the very first time, his voice carried a genuine, heartfelt warmth, just like a real father. Dad. My voice choked up. 1,000 words got stuck in my throat. Zhou gently patted my shoulder, motioning for me to sit down. He picked up the teapot again
and poured a cup of hot tea for both me and Faochin.
as the steam rose, carrying the sweet aroma of the tea. It seemed to wash away the remaining hostility in the living room.
Xuan, I know you hold a grudge in your heart.
He looked at me, his eyes filled with sincerity. You've suffered so much over these past 10 years.
I shook my head.
My eyes stinging with tears.
I didn't suffer, Dad.
I was just too stupid.
I didn't understand your true intentions.
Jokoa smiled softly.
A smile worn by the years. You're not stupid. You're just too kind. From the very first year I met you, I knew you were destined for great things.
You have drive, and you take responsibility.
And your feelings for Zhou Jing have always been genuine.
But you have one fatal flaw.
He paused for a moment, his gaze suddenly turning sharp. You're too soft-hearted.
And you care too much about keeping the peace.
You don't know how to say no.
You think that giving unconditionally to your family is love.
But you don't realize that kindness without boundaries only feeds endless greed.
He glanced at the two tightly closed bedroom doors, a flash of disappointment and sorrow in his eyes.
This family is already rotten to the core. Lu Yumi only cares about her own maiden family. And Zhou Hao is nothing but a spoiled, useless brat we ruined from childhood.
If I hadn't hardened my heart
and built a wall to keep you two separate from them, then no matter how much money you made,
it would have been swallowed whole by those two bottomless pits.
By then, not only would your career be ruined, your marriage with Zhou Jing was bound to be destroyed by them sooner or later anyway.
A cold shiver ran down my spine as I listened.
I break out in a cold sweat.
because I knew
Every single word my father-in-law said was the brutal, bloody truth. If he hadn't used such an extreme method to block the funds, that 2 million yuan would have vanished into thin air a long time ago.
And I would probably still be mindlessly pouring in more and more.
But what about the orchids?
I couldn't help but ask.
What did those 10 pots of orchids actually mean? At the mention of orchids,
Zhou Boha's gaze softened.
Did you really think I don't know anything about flowers?
he stood up, walked over to the window, and looked outside.
The ancients said, to grow orchids, you must first tend to their roots. Only with strong roots can the leaves flourish.
And only then will the flowers bloom with sweet fragrance.
Giving you a half-dead orchid every year
Was my way of teaching you a vital lesson.
Your company back then
Was just like the leaves of that orchid.
it looked bright and beautiful on the outside.
Everyone praised you as a rising star, but your roots were just too weak.
Your roots are your family, your ultimate weakness.
I converted your money into gold bars and buried them in the mud where nobody would look, just to help you nurture your roots.
Only when your roots run deep enough and stand strong enough can they weather the storms. And only then, even after all the leaves have withered,
Will they have a chance to sprout anew? The compacted, hardened soil
represents this suffocating family environment of yours.
the yellowing leaves.
represent how you're running yourself ragged while they constantly drain your lifeblood. I wanted you to see it and remember it every single year until the day you finally replace the soil with your own hands and let your roots breathe again. His words struck me like a sudden revelation. It left me completely stunned. So, it was never meant to humiliate me.
That was a silent warning that lasted 10 long years
He used an almost Zen-like approach.
to enlighten a foolish mortal like me.
Tears were already streaming down Shoujing's face. She walked over to her father, held his hand, and whispered, Dad, I'm so sorry. We all misunderstood you.
Zhou Bohua turned and gently stroked his daughter's hair with deep affection.
Silly girl. We're family.
Why are you saying sorry?
He turned back and looked at me once more.
Xuan, you've passed every single test.
Even when I was at my coldest and most ruthless, you never once thought about divorcing Zhou Jing. That shows you're a man of honor. And when you were buried under massive debt, you didn't run away.
Instead, you tried to sell your house to pay it off.
That shows you have real accountability. You gave those orchids, the ones you saw as your ultimate shame, to the neighbors, instead of smashing them in a fit of rage. That shows you still have kindness in your heart. That is why this money, I can finally hand it over to you with peace of mind. He pointed to the gold bars and the bank card on the table. Starting today, the very way they belong to their rightful owner again. How you spend it, how you invest it.
That's entirely up to you.
But you must remember one thing. His expression became incredibly grave. For a man to remain undefeated, he doesn't just need the ability to make money. He needs an iron fist to protect his wealth, and a pair of eyes that can see right through people's hearts. I stood up and bowed deeply to him once more. This time, it wasn't an apology. It was a bow of apprenticeship. Dad,
I understand now.
as I straightened up,
There wasn't a single trace of confusion left in my eyes.
Zhou Bohua nodded, his face filled with relief.
He knew that the seed he had planted in me had finally broken through the soil.
he sat back down in his armchair.
And his entire aura shifted.
He was no longer just an ordinary old man tending to his flowers, but a powerful patriarch holding the reins of the family.
The patriarch whose word is law.
He picked up his teacup, took a slow sip, and slammed it down on the table.
The sharp clink made the air in the room instantly freeze.
Lu Yumi.
Zhou Hao, he barked in a low voice. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an absolute, undeniable authority.
Get the hell out here right now!
The doors to both bedrooms swung open at almost the exact same time.
It was obvious they'd been eavesdropping behind the doors the entire time. Their faces were filled with terror, resentment, and a lingering touch of venom. They didn't dare look at Zhou Goa, and they didn't dare look at me either. They just kept their heads down, looking like two prisoners awaiting sentencing. Zhou Hao muttered under his breath, trying to gain some sympathy.
I am not your father!
Zhou Bohua cut him off sharply.
I, Zhou Goa, do not have a son who does nothing but leech off his parents and suck them dry.
Not daring to utter another word,
Lu Yumi summoned her courage and began to sob.
Koa, what are you doing?
We're a family. Why can't we just talk things out?
Do you really have to do this in front of an outsider?
Shut up. Zhou Guohua slammed the armrest. An outsider?
Wei Shuan poured his heart and soul out for this family.
Why didn't you call him an outsider then? Now that I'm helping him protect his inheritance, he suddenly becomes an outsider?
Lu Yumim, let me make this crystal clear to you today.
Zhou Guohua pointed a finger at her,
His eyes ice cold.
Starting tomorrow, I will be in charge of every single household expense.
I'll give you 5,000 yuan a month for your allowance.
And you won't get a single penny more.
No more gambling with those toxic friends of yours.
And no more dealing with your family's trivial, endless drama. Don't even think about taking another cent from this household. If you ever dare to go behind my back to ask Xuan or Zhou Jing for money again, I'll go with you to the registry office right now.
Xuan was the one who bought this house.
Once we divorce, you're leaving with absolutely nothing.
Get lost and crawl back to your family in the countryside.
Li Yumei's sobbing stopped instantly.
She stared at Zhou Guohua in utter disbelief, her lips trembling. How can you be so heartless?
Zhou Guohua, we've been married for decades. Decades of marriage? And yet, all those years still couldn't warm up your heart, which only cares about your own family.
Zhou Guohua cut her off without a shred of mercy.
I'm putting my foot down and closing this door for good today.
The choice is yours. Lu Yumi was completely defeated.
She knew Zhou Guohua was a man of his word. Leaving empty-handed was worse than death to her.
she could only grit her teeth and shut her mouth, her eyes burning with resentment.
Zhou Guohua turned his gaze toward Zhou Hao.
Zhou Hao's legs went weak with fear.
Zhou Hao, now let's talk about you.
You're 26 years old this year.
Not 6.
Starting tomorrow,
Quit that so-called investment job of yours. I've already asked an old army buddy to find you a job as a loader at the logistics park on the east side of town. The monthly salary is 4,000 yuan.
meals and boarding included. You're reporting for duty tomorrow.
What?
Zhou Hao screamed.
Dad, you're sending me to do manual labor? That's no job for a human.
Even if it's not a job for a human, it's still better than being the useless trash you are right now.
Now listen to me carefully.
This is an order.
Not a discussion. Sell that car under your name tomorrow and give the money back to Shunan. From now on, you can squeeze onto the bus and subway like everyone else.
As for the wedding house Xuan bought for you,
Zhou Guohua looked over at me.
his eyes filled with silent inquiry. I understood immediately. I stepped forward and looked at Zhou Hao.
My voice, calm, but resolute.
That apartment has my name on the deed.
And starting today, I'm taking it back.
Hearing this, Zhou Hao reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on.
He instantly flew into a rage.
Zhuang, what gives you the right?
That's my wedding home. I have the right because every single cent of that 1.2 million yuan was earned by me, penny by penny.
I looked at him coldly. Well, you didn't chip in a single cent.
But for Zhou Jing's sake, I'll give you a choice. Either move out of that apartment within a month, or treat it as if I'm renting it to you. On top of your monthly car loan, you'll pay me 3,000 yuan in rent. Only when you pay off that 1.2 million yuan. While I transfer the title,
Over to you.
Zhou Hao's face turned a dark, angry purple.
He pointed at me, shaking with so much rage he couldn't speak.
you all of you.
You're all ganging up on me.
Ganging up on you? Zhou Guohua sneered.
If you actually had some backbone, no one could ever bully you.
But if you choose to be a useless piece of trash,
No one can ever help you stand up.
I'll give you one final choice. Either man up and get a job,
And start earning money to feed yourself. Or get the hell out of this house right now. I'll pretend I never had a son like you.
The final ultimatum had been delivered. The final ultimatum.
Zhou Hao looked at his furious father.
Then turned to look at my cold, indifferent face, before finally looking at his only remaining hope, Lu Yumei.
But Liu Yumei quickly avoided his gaze.
She could barely save her own skin right now. So how could she possibly dare to stick her neck out for her son? Zhou Hao's final shred of hope was instantly shattered. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the floor, howling in absolute despair.
His cries were filled with bitter resentment.
There was fear in his eyes, but even more so, the utter despair of a spoiled, oversized baby finally waking up from his dream. As I watched this scene play out, I didn't feel a single shred of satisfaction. All I felt was a profound, aching sadness. The drastic measure Zhou Guohua took might be agonizingly painful, but it was the only cure that could save this family. Cleaning house
And cutting out the rough.
only after today. Can this family truly be reborn? By the time Zhou Jing and I finally left, Zhou Hao's wailing was still echoing behind us. While Liu Yumi sat slumped on the sofa, looking completely hollowed out, as if all the life had been sucked out of her in a single second.
Zhou Guohua walked us to the door.
He handed the black plastic bag containing the gold bars and bank cards back into my hands.
The bag was heavy.
But for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. Dad. I wanted to say something, but he waved his hand.
Go on, do what you need to do.
Remember, you don't have to worry about a single thing with this family anymore. Your only job now is to take good care of Zhou Jing and run your own business well. Leave everything here to me. When he said those words, leave it to me, he stood up so straight, like an unyielding pine tree that would never bend. I gave him a firm, heavy nod. Zhuing and I got into the car, leaving behind the place that had held 10 years of our bitter grievances. As the car merged onto the highway, the city's neon lights blurred past the window. Zhou Jing remained completely silent, her eyes red and swollen. I freed up one hand to take hers. Her hand was freezing cold. "I'm sorry, Shunan," she whispered, her voice thick and nasal from crying. "I always used to think my dad was too harsh on you, and way too soft on my brother. I kept trying to play the peacemaker in the middle, asking you to just bear with it a little more. Only now do I realize just how terribly wrong I was. Not only did I fail to help you, but I actually ended up becoming their accomplice. I let you suffer so much pain all these years." I gently squeezed her hand and pulled the car over to the side of the road. I turned around and looked at her earnestly. "Zhou Jie, 这是一种法. You only wanted what was best for this family. You wanted everyone to be happy. You are far kinder than I am. But Dad taught us a lesson today too. Kindness needs to have teeth. Otherwise, it just becomes weakness. Let's leave the past in the past. We've both learned our lesson. From now on, we will build our life and our home together." Zhou Jing's tears finally spilled over, rolling down her cheeks. She threw herself into my arms, clinging to me tightly. This embrace felt tighter and more real than any moment in the past 10 years. Only at this moment did our hearts truly become one. After coming to Zhou Jing, I started the car again. But I didn't head home. Instead, I pulled out my phone, sounded the babber to that bald-headed debt collector, and dialed. The call went through almost instantly. The noisy sounds of blaring music and loud cursing came through from the other end. "Who is this?" The bald guy's voice barked, thick with impatience.
It's Xuan.
I said calmly. The other end suddenly fell silent. "Oh, well, if it isn't Mr. Xu, how about that? The 3 days aren't even up, and you've already scraped the money together." His voice was dripping with mockery. "Yes," I replied. "Principal and interest. 1 million in total. Where are you? I'll bring it to you right now." The bald guy was clearly taken aback. He obviously hadn't expected me to get the money so quickly. Well, not bad, kid. You actually pulled it off." He gave me the address of a bars. "I'll be waiting for you here. You have 30 minutes. Don't be late." "Got it," I said, and hung up the phone. I slammed on the gas and sped toward the address. Zhou Jing grabbed my arm nervously. "Xuan, going there alone. Isn't it too dangerous?" "Don't worry," I said, keeping my eyes fixed on the road ahead. My gaze was cold and resolute. I used to be a helpless victim, at the mercy of others. But things are different now. 30 minutes later, I walked into that shady, chaotic bars, carrying a duffel bag. Baldy was drinking in a booth with a few of his thugs. He whistled the moment he saw me. "Well, look who actually showed up. Where's the cash?" Without wasting any words, I slammed the duffel bag onto the table and zipped it open. Inside were 100 neat stacks of brand new bills. The sea of red cash was absolutely blinding. The breathing of Baldy and his thugs instantly grew heavy. He picked up a stack and checked to see if they were real. A satisfied grin spread across his face. "Mr. Shi, you really are a man of your word." He gestured for his men to take the money, while handing me an IOU. "Here's your IOU. Now we're even." They took the note. But I didn't leave right away. I stared at Baldy and spoke slowly. "You've got your money, and I've got my note. Now, let's talk about something else." Baldy paused, caught off guard. "Like what?" My eyes swept over his thuggish-looking men. 3 days ago, you guys came to my house and slapped my face and terrified my family. My voice wasn't loud, but it made the air around us instantly turn ice cold. "Don't you think it's time we settle this score as well?" Baldy's face darkened. "Hey, punk, what is that supposed to mean? Just pay back the money and we're done. Are you looking for trouble?" I chuckled softly. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and tacked on an audio file. And there it was, Baldy's voice, booming from the speaker, repeating exactly what he said at my front door that day. "Short me by even 1 cent, and I will personally break your leg." Then, I pulled up a photo. It was a picture of my front door, defaced with bright red spray paint, with the words, "Pay your deities" written in massive letters. Intimidation and extortion. Trespassing. Malicious destruction of property. Hold all these charges combined. Think, how many years do you think you and your boys will rot in prison? Baldy's face drained of color. He never expected me to have a trump card like this up my sleeve. "Are you threatening me?" he muttered through gritted teeth. "No." I shook my head. I put my phone away. "I'm just making one thing clear to you. I Shudan, and not some pushover you can just push around. Today I'm paying you back $1 million. Principal and interest. That is me, playing by the rules.
But as for what you and your thugs did to me,
You have to give me an explanation for that. I pointed at the empty glass on the table. Slap yourself in the face 10 times and down this glass of liquor. Do that, and we'll call it even. Otherwise, I'm calling the police right now. The bars fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Baldy's men all stood up, glaring at me with pure rage. Baldy's face flushed with a mix of fury and embarrassment. His fists clenched so hard his knuckles cracked. He was a man of status in this neighborhood, and he had never been humiliated like this before. But as he looked into my calm, freezing eyes, he felt a sudden knot of fear in his stomach. He knew that since I dared to come here all by myself and speak to him with such confidence, I had to have some serious leverage. After a tense standoff that lasted for a full minute, he finally took a deep breath. Deflating, like a punctured balloon, he picked up his glass, filled it to the brim, and then he raised his hand. Cled, slap, slap, slap. 10 brutal slaps to his own face. Each blow was harder than the last, immediately swelling his cheeks red. Once he was finished, he grabbed his glass and downed it in one gulp. Brother, today, I admit defeat. He looked at me, his eyes filled with mixed emotions about what happened before. I'm sorry. I nodded, standing from the time, cut back my promissory note, and turned on my heel to leave, without saying another single word. As I walked out of the bars, the night breeze felt incredibly refreshing. I tilted my head back, letting out a long, heavy sigh of relief. I knew that from this moment on, my life was finally getting a fresh start. By the time I got home, it was already late at night. Everything in the house looked exactly the same, but the headspace Shoji and I were in was worlds apart. The balcony was completely empty. The moonlight spilled in, casting a cold, pale glow across the floor. Gone was that heavy stone basin with the yellow orchid that had suffocated me for 10 long years. I tossed the black duffel bag onto the coffee table in the living room. The $1 million in cash inside was still giving off that distinct smell of fresh ink. I pulled out the bank loan repayment slip and set it aside. What was left was for us to face what was truly in our hearts. Jojing didn't jump for joy over the recovered money like she used to. She just quietly poured me a cup of warm water and sat down right next to me. There was an unprecedented sense of peace and resolve in her eyes.
久仰，我的有钱的娘。
She wasn't asking about how the company would pay off its debts, but what I planned to do with my life. I took a sip of water. The warm liquid trickled down my throat, warming my heart as well. I don't plan on saving the company. As I uttered those words, my heart didn't even skip a beat. That company, the one I poured my entire soul into, after this sudden collapse, I finally see it for what it really is. Fragile and weak. Just like my father-in-law said, my foundation was always too weak. It's already rotted to the core. I looked at Zhou Jing and told her honestly. The clients are gone. Our key people have been poached. But worse, the business model itself has a fatal flaw. It relies way too much on just a few major clients, leaving its ability to survive a crisis at zero. Even if I sink all $10 million into it, it'll only delay the inevitable. It might even drag us down into a deeper, dark abyss.
究竟灵深验探吗？
And slowly nodded. I'm with you. No second guessing. No useless laments about how much of a waste it was. Just 3 simple words. I'm with you. A wave of warmth filled my chest. I squeezed her hand tightly. So, what I'm going to do isn't try to drag this company out of the intensive care unit. Instead, I'll let it die completely. Strip the absolute best pieces from its corpse and use them to build a brand new business empire that truly belongs to me. A fire blazed in my eyes. It wasn't the bitter rage of a bankrupt loser, but the calculated fire of someone who sees the whole chessboard, the burning ambition of a rising king. Over the last 10 years, my father-in-law didn't just teach me how to read people. He gave me the sheer guts and wisdom to burn everything down and rise from the ashes. But talk 2 hours, mapping out the future of our business and our lives together. For the first time in 10 years, we had a conversation this deep, this raw and honest. No blame, no doubts, just absolute trust, holding each other up. As the first light of dawn broke, we finally sorted everything out. Out of the 10 million, 800,000 will go to pay off the bank loan. 1 million goes back to Baldy. That's a must. The remaining 8,200,000 will be our capital to make a comeback. There's one more thing, Zhou Jing suddenly said. What about Uncle Zhang? We owe him a massive favor. I nodded heavily. Yes, we absolutely have to repay him, and we have to do it right. But we both know, if we just give him cash, old Zhang will never accept it. He's a man of integrity and principles. Zhou Jing thought for a moment, and her eyes lit up.
Juan, I remember Uncle Zhang saying,
His world is his flowers. His biggest dream is to open a flower shop of his own. It doesn't have to be huge, just a place where he can tend to the flowers and plants he loves. He knows flowers, he loves them, and he has the skills. He just never had the capital. Plus, his son's business failed a few years ago and left him with some debt. He had to use all his savings to bail his son out. I instantly understood what Zhou Jing was getting at. Better to teach a man to fish than to just give him one.
So you mean
We help him get this flower shop up and running?
exactly? Zhou Jing nodded vigorously. We funded
And open it in his name.
It won't feel like we're just handing him money
Instead, we'll invest in the shop's renovation.
and sort out all his suppliers for him. Once the shop turns a profit, we take a share of the dividends.
That way, he can fulfill his dream without feeling like it's charity.
But look at Zhou Jing.
And smiled from the bottom of my heart.
My wife
Is not just kind.
She's incredibly wise.
It is decided then, I am calling the shots.
And if we are opening a shop for him, it has to be the absolute best.
We need a prime location, right next to the luxury residential areas in the city center.
The interior needs to be highly sophisticated, focusing exclusively on high-end orchids and rare exotic flowers.
Uncle Junk has the expertise, and we have the capital. This is not just about repaying my debt of gratitude to him. It is also my way of saying goodbye to the last 10 years of my life.
Those orchids, the ones that once symbolized my deepest humiliation.
Now, I am going to make them bloom with the most dazzling brilliance under my watch.
Right then, my phone rang.
It was an unknown number.
I hesitated for a second,
But I picked it up anyway.
a familiar, anxious voice came through the receiver.
Mr. Xu?
Make me, Li Wei.
Li Wei, the technical director of my former company.
He was one of the original employees who built the startup with me.
And one of the few people I trusted completely.
After the company collapsed, he did not jump ship like the others to look for a better job.
Instead, he chose to stay behind and help pick up the pieces.
Li, what's wrong?
My heart skipped a beat. The spear quizzed of beat.
Mr. Xu, we have a major problem. Li Wei kept his voice incredibly low. That bastard Ma Dong,
He's making his move. Madong,
my arch enemy and the mastermind who single-handedly dragged my company into the abyss.
what did he do?
My voice instantly turned cold.
He somehow got wind of your bankruptcy, and now he's trying to launch a hostile takeover of our patented technology.
He's teamed up with a few of the shareholders.
And they're planning to buy out our core technology. The one we spent 5 years pouring our blood, sweat, and tears into, for pennies on the dollar. On top of that, he's telling everyone that he'll make sure you never, ever show your face in this industry again.
Listening to Li Wei's words, the corners of my mouth slowly curled into a cold, menacing smile. Madong, do you really think I'm still the same helpless Shinam you can just walk all over?
You think you're looking at a corpse, ready to tear me apart and feast on my remains,
But you have no idea that this corpus has already opened its eyes,
and he's already sharpened his fangs.
waiting for you to walk right in. Calm down, Li Wei.
I spoke into the phone, my voice terrifyingly calm.
Listen to me. Here is what you need to do. Over the phone, I laid out every single detail of my plan to Li Wei.
On the other end of the line, Li Wei went from utter shock to confusion,
Before finally catching on and becoming incredibly excited.
Mr. Xi, this move of yours is absolutely ruthless.
You're completely pulling the rug out from under him.
This isn't ruthless.
I said flatly.
It's called giving him a taste of his own medicine.
Ma Dong wants to feast on my corpse. Well, I'm going to make him choke on his own bones.
After hanging up the phone,
I saw Zhou Jing looking at me, her face filled with worry.
Xuan, are you sure about this?
That Ma Dong.
I've heard he plays incredibly dirty.
And he has some powerful people backing him.
I pulled her into my arms,
Gently patting her back.
I wouldn't have been sure before.
Because my hands were tied, and I had too much to lose. But now, things are different.
When you've already died once,
What is there left to fear?
for the next 3 days,
I barely slept a wink
I mobilized the over 8 million yuan my father-in-law had given me.
and began quietly setting my trap. First, through a newly registered investment company.
Dirt cheap prices?
I began buying up my former company's debt bit by bit from all the minor creditors.
Ma Dong only had eyes for the big banks and financial institutions.
Completely dismissing these small, scattered creditors.
He thought this petty debt was harmless.
But he forgot that a single spark can start a prairie fire.
By the time all those minor debts were concentrated in my hands,
I had already quietly replaced the banks.
I'd become my former company's largest creditor.
This meant any asset liquidation or transfer now required my explicit approval.
those patents Ma Dong wanted to snatch up for pennies.
Well, he doesn't stand a chance now.
Next, I had Li Wei leverage his remaining influence inside the company. I secretly got in touch with all the core tech staff, the ones Ma Dong had poached, and those who left when the company went under. We made them a promise.
If they were willing to come back, I would start a brand new company.
Everyone would get founding shares.
We wouldn't just be boss and employees anymore.
We'd be big partners.
Trust is the most valuable asset.
Ma Dong could steal my staff.
But he couldn't steal their loyalty to me.
or their dedication to our shared dream. Finally, I had Li Wei help me put on a show.
A massive play to lure the enemy into our trap.
Li Wei pretended to be fed up with me, calling me selfish and incompetent. He reached out to Ma Dong on his own,
Claiming he wanted to jump ship and join him.
as a token of his loyalty,
从马掌
that I was still holding on to a core algorithm that hadn't been patented yet. This algorithm was the very foundation of our next generation product, and its value far exceeded all of the company's current patents combined.
He also casually let slip.
But because I was desperate for cash, I was planning to sell this algorithm to an out-of-town company for 2 million yuan. Sure enough, Ma Dong took the bait. For a man who was greedy by nature, he wanted to grab anything of value for himself. He immediately ordered Li Wei to sabotage my deal with that out-of-town company and offered to buy the algorithm himself for 3 million yuan. He thought he was playing the ultimate opportunist, completely unaware that he had already walked right into a hunter's carefully laid trap.
Everything was set.
The moment for the final showdown had arrived.
Ma Dong and I met in a private room at an upscale tea house. He arrived riding high, absolutely bursting with smugness.
He was practically glowing. He looked at me, his gaze filled with the arrogance and pity of a victor. It was like he was looking at a beaten dog.
Shonan. Didn't expect this, did you?
That we'd be meeting like this? He crossed his legs, leisurely sipping his tea. A wise man knows when to back down. Stop trying to keep that pathetic little company of yours afloat. Pack up your patents and technology and sell them to me. I'll give you $5 million. At least it'll give you a way to survive for the rest of your life.
How about that? Pretty generous of me, right? He looked at me with pity, acting like a benevolent savior.
As if for handing me charity. I smiled slightly and said nothing.
Think.
I simply reached into my briefcase, pulled out a document, and slid it right in front of him. Mr. Ma, let's first discuss this $3 million deal. This is the agreement my lawyer drafted regarding the transfer of that core algorithm. Ma Dong didn't even glance at it. He just scrawled his signature across the page and had his assistant slide over a check for $3 million. Pleasure doing business, he laughed. Xuan. If you had been this sensible earlier, you wouldn't have ended up in this pathetic state. I picked up the check, gently blew on the fresh ink, and slipped it into my pocket. The money has been received. I looked at him, the smile slowly fading from my face, replaced by a gaze so cold, it was like looking at a dead man. Now, we can talk about your offer to buy my company for $5 million.
Mahon was taken aback.
Clearly caught off guard by the sudden shift in my attitude. What, you think it's not enough?
Junan, you shouldn't get too greedy.
No, it's not that I think it's too little. I shook my head, pulled another thick stack of documents from my briefcase, and slammed them right in front of him. It's because you don't have the right to.
班长很
And picked up the papers. The moment he saw the title on the very first page, his face drained of all color. It was a proof of debt. It clearly stated that I, Xuan, am now the largest creditor of your company, holding over 60% of your company's total debt. This is impossible.
Ma Dong's voice completely cracked.
He bolted upright, glaring at me like he wanted to kill me. His assistant panicked too, hurriedly grabbing the documents to inspect them. Then he looked up and slowly shook his head at Ma Dong. The documents were real. Oh, it's very possible, I said, leaning back in my chair. I took my time, speaking slowly. Mr. Ma, the person sitting in front of you isn't some bankrupt loser anymore. I am now your biggest creditor. And under bankruptcy law, I have the sole power to veto any ridiculous asset sale you try to pull. So your $5 million joke of an offer is officially dead in the water. Ma Dong's face flushed bright red, then went pale, before turning an ugly shade of gray. It was like watching a cheap watercolor painting melt. He pointed a trembling finger at me, his lips quivering. You set me up. That's right, I admitted, completely unfazed. I set you up. Just like you went out of your way to ruin me back then.
But don't worry. This is just the appetizer.
I snapped my fingers. The double doors of the private dining room swung open. Li Lei walked in, followed by my top core tech developers. Every single one of them held a resignation letter. They marched straight up to Ma Dong and slapped their letters down on the table, lined up in a neat row. Li Wei looked at Ma Dong and smirked. Mr. Ma, I'm so sorry. These key guys you spent a fortune poaching from us? We're taking them back. Ma Dong's eyes practically bulged with fury. Haig let himself dry to poach these engineers. They were the literal future of his entire company. But now, they had all turned on him. You bastards! Ma Dong spat, his entire body shaking with rage. Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Ma. The real show is just getting started. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Immediately, a recorded conversation between Ma Dong and Li Wei started blasting through the speakers. It clearly records exactly how he manipulated Li Wei into stealing my trade secrets, and his entire plan to launch a hostile takeover through dirty, underhanded tactics. Corporate espionage.
and malicious sabotage of business operations.
I murmured softly, President Ma, if I hand this recording over to your competitors, how many years do you think you'll be spending behind bars? And will your company's stock price plunge straight to rock bottom because of this scandal?
Ma Dong swayed, losing his balance for a second, and slumped back into his chair, his strength completely gone.
The arrogance and smugness from moments ago were completely gone from his face,
leaving nothing but a pale, dead-eyed despair.
He knew
he was finished.
He went from being a high and mighty hunter to a completely trapped prey, unable to move a single inch.
And I was the one holding the blade. I stood up, walked over to him, and looked down at him coldly.
Now I'm giving you two choices.
First, I call the police,
and we see each other in court. Second,
I paused,
letting out a devilish smile.
You hand over your company's core smart manufacturing business, along with all the equipment, personnel, and patents, to me, at a reasonable price.
Then you take whatever empty shell you have left and get the hell out of this city, and never show your face here again.
So, President Ma, which one is it going to be?
Ma Dong's lips twitched like a fish gasping for air out of water,
But he couldn't squeeze out a single word.
Cold sweat poured down from his temples, drenching his expensive silk shirt. His eyes were filled with pure terror, bitterness, and bone-deep regret.
He couldn't understand. No matter how hard he tried,
How, in just a few short days,
Alps's prey he thought was entirely at his mercy had suddenly turned into a prehistoric beast, ready to swallow him whole.
he wanted to fight back, but I held his entire lifeline firmly in my grasp.
That recording was a sword of Damocles hanging over his head, ready to ruin him utterly at any second.
And sent him straight to prison.
He lost. He had lost everything.
Stripped of absolutely everything.
For a long time,
He just sat there, as if every ounce of strength had been drained from his body. He slumped helplessly in his chair.
finally, he rasped out, I'll take the second option. I smiled. I knew he would choose this.
Because for a man like him, freedom and the chance to make a comeback are far more important than a momentary flash of pride. Excellent. I signaled, the lawyer standing behind me to place the second contract. The one I had prepared long ago, right in front of him.
It was an asset transfer agreement. I had set the price myself. A fair price that would make his heart bleed, but one he had absolutely no choice but to accept.
Ma Dong picked up the pen, his hand trembling like a leaf in the autumn wind.
The exact moment he signed his name, I could almost hear the sound of his grand ambitions shattering to pieces.
The era of a ruthless business tycoon had officially come to an end, and the reign of a new king was about to begin. A week later, with swift and absolute dominance, I completed the takeover and integration of Ma Dong's core business. I chose not to rebuild on the ruins of my old company. Instead, I announced the launch of a brand new entity, Rebirth Technology. Rebirth represents my own resurrection, the rebirth of this company, and the dawn of a whole new era for the entire industry. I perfectly merged my old company's remaining assets with the premium operations I had seized from Ma Dong. Not only did I take back everything that was rightfully mine, but I used it as a stepping stone to expand my business empire several times over.
Lile and the key engineers who returned were all awarded their founding shares, exactly as promised.
Malaria across the entire company was sky high. Our team was completely united, and we pulsed with an unprecedented level of energy. On the day of our grand opening, I didn't invite any media,
And I didn't hold some flashy, empty ceremony.
I simply gathered every single employee downstairs, outside our building, sitting on the steps.
I looked out at the sea of familiar faces, all filled with trust and hope.
Starting today, the slate is wiped completely clean.
I, Xuan, give you my word, right here and now.
Reef technology belongs to every single one of us. We don't care about your past. We only care about your future. We don't care about seniority. We only care about capability. As long as you're willing to put in the work, this company will never, ever let you down. We have only one goal.
I raised my hand and pointed straight toward the sky.
To become this industry's undisputed, absolute king. All the employees shouted along with me, their voices shaking the very ground, echoing all the way to the heavens. In that exact moment, I knew I was no longer alone. Behind me stood an invincible army of steel. That evening, I took Zhou back to my father-in-law's house. I was carrying 2 bottles of premium Mao Tai and some of his favorite deli meats. My mother-in-law, Liu Yumi, opened the door. When she saw us, she squeezed out a stiff yet polite smile on her face.
叫往这间游吧。
Come on in, sit down. Her attitude was a night and day difference compared to before. In the living room, Zhou Guo was just as he always was, sitting leisurely in his armchair, listening to Peking opera. Except there was now an orchid on the coffee table beside him.
The orchid had thick, sturdy roots, lush green leaves,
brimming with life, and buds just waiting to bloom. When he saw me, he just gave a faint nod, a motion for me to sit down. Zhu Hao wasn't home. According to Liu Yumei,
He actually went to work at the logistics park.
Although he came home every day exhausted like a dead dog, cursing and swearing the whole time, he had finally taken his first step toward earning his own living. Dinner was served in no time.
Lu Yumi was actually a pretty good cook.
It was just that she never used to bother putting in any effort for a son-in-law like me.
But today, she was being 100% attentive.
At the dinner table, I poured Joe Goa a full glass of liquor.
I laid out everything that had happened over the past few days,
From how I lured Ma Dong into the trap,
to how we pulled off the hostile takeover.
and finally, to the establishment of the new company.
I told him the entire story, from start to finish. I spoke very calmly.
Without a single hint of bragging. Listening on the side, Yu Yumi and Zhou Jing were absolutely terrified, unable to imagine how, in just a few short days, just how brutal and intense this business war of mine had been.
Only Zhou Kuwa truly understood.
Throughout it all, he kept a completely blank face.
He just sat there, listening quietly.
Occasionally taking a bite of food or a sip of wine. Only when I was completely finished
Did he slowly set down his glass?
he stared right at me, and a sharp, fleeting glint flashed in his weathered eyes. He didn't praise me for being smart, nor did he compliment my ruthless tactics. Instead, he just said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life.
Remember, Xuan, a soft heart cannot lead an army, and boundless generosity cannot build a fortune.
You used to be too kind.
But that wasn't a virtue.
It was a weakness. Because your unchecked kindness would only end up hurting the people who truly love you.
And the ones who need your protection. The point.
Now, you've learned to be ruthless. But never forget, ruthlessness is not meant for oppressing the weak.
It is meant to guard your own kindness.
A real man must have the compassionate heart of a Buddha, but also the ruthless, thunderous resolve of a fierce guardian.
Only then
Can you protect your family
Guards your peace.
and ensure the people you love live in safety for the rest of their lives? With that, he raised his glass and offered a toast. This one is to you. I quickly raised my glass, clinking it firmly against his. The sharp, clear ring echoed through the room.
I knew right then.
That I had finally earned this old man's true respect. He no longer saw me as just a son-in-law to be tested and guided, but as an equal who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him, as a man capable of protecting this family alongside him.
On the drive back,
The moonlight was beautiful.
Zhou Jing leaned gently against my shoulder, a warm, happy smile on her face.
Xuan, I've already found the perfect storefront for Uncle Zhang's flower shop.
It's right on the commercial street across from our neighborhood. It's literally the best spot there.
That's great, I smiled, nodding.
Have you thought of a name yet? I've got it, Zhou Jing said with a playful wink. Let's call it the Orchid Sanctuary.
The Orchid Sanctuary, filled with the sweet scent of orchids and the warmth of a true home.
As I watched the city skyline fade away outside my car window, a profound sense of peace washed over me.
Those 10 ridiculous wasted years felt like nothing but a bad dream.
But now, the dream is finally over, and I am awake. Ahead of me lies a brand new world, bursting with hope.
And I will reclaim my future, like the king I was always meant to be.
Once I settled the score with Ma Dong and sorted out the company, the very first thing I did was track down Uncle Zhang.
Zhu Jing and I brought some fresh fruit and premium tea and knocked on his door across the hall.
Just like before, Uncle Zhang answered the door.
The moment he saw us,
A warm, genuine smile lit up his face.
well, if it isn't Xiao Xia and Xia Chou, come on in. Make yourselves at home.
He warmly ushered us inside.
The apartment wasn't big, but it was kept incredibly neat and tidy. Out on the balcony, the orchids in those stone pots, the ones that used to be mine,
But completely different now.
every withered yellow leaf had been carefully pruned away, and vibrant green shoots were bursting with life. The hard-packed dirt had been replaced with rich, loose, organic soil. Every single pot was absolutely thriving.
A far cry from the dying, neglected plants I had seen before.
It was clear Uncle Zhang had poured his heart into saving them. Uncle Zhang, you've got a real magic touch, I said, genuinely amazed.
Uncle Zhang waved it off,
A proud grin spreading across his face.
Oh, please.
I'm just messing around. I just happen to love doing this. Besides, these orchids had amazing bones to begin with. They're rare. Premium Cymbidium orchids.
It's just that their previous owner had absolutely no idea how to care for them.
And they almost ruined these beauties completely. As he spoke, he had absolutely no clue that the clueless owner he was talking about was standing right in front of him.
Zhou Jing and I locked eyes.
Both of us biting our tongues to keep from laughing. After a bit more small talk, I decided to get straight to the point. Uncle Zhang, we actually came over today because there's something important I'd like to discuss with you.
Do? Old Zhang put us some tea. What's on your mind? Go ahead.
I took a moment to gather my thoughts and said honestly, Uncle Zhang,
I've always thought your incredible talent for growing flowers
is such a waste if you just keep it to yourself at home. I want to invest in you and open up a flower shop. What do you think? The moment the words left my mouth, old Zhang's smile froze on his face. He immediately shook his hands in protest. No, absolutely not. Xiaoxiu, this is out of the question. His reaction was exactly what I had expected. I appreciate your kindness, but I can't take your money. I barely did anything to help with those gold bars last time. I was just returning them to their rightful owner. And you've already thanked me for that. I might be a poor old man, but I still have my pride. I can't just accept such massive charity for doing nothing. He spoke with absolute resolve.
现今比赛呀，较劲全定见底。老柯乔，
You've got it all wrong. We're not hand-delivering charity, nor are we just giving you free money. We genuinely believe this is a brilliant business opportunity, and we really want to partner with you.
Old Zhang shook his head anyway.
What does a useless old man like me know about business?
I appreciate the thought, girls, but let's not speak of this again. Seeing him so stubborn, I knew right away
That appealing to sentiment alone wasn't going to work. I pulled a document out of the briefcase I brought with me. It was a business proposal I had personally spent an entire day putting together. I laid the proposal flat on the coffee table in front of him. Anpajal, please don't reject this just yet. Just hear me out while I break it down for you. My tone shifted, sounding just like I was pitching to a room of hypercritical investors. I'd done my research. Our city is flooded with average flower shops. When it comes to high-end bespoke floral designs, especially when it comes to breeding and selling rare orchids, it is practically an untapped market. Plus, we are surrounded by high-end residential neighborhoods. The residents there have serious spending power and impeccable taste. This is a massive untapped market. I pointed at the data charts in the business proposal. Your expertise is the absolute core of this project, a most irreplaceable competitive edge. I will handle the funding, find the storefront, and take care of the renovations and all the legal paperwork. You will be in charge of the cultivation, growing the most beautiful flowers, and building our very own brand. For this shop, you are bringing in your technical expertise as equity. I will give you a 30% sweat equity stake. After deducting all operating costs, you will take 30% of the annual profits, and I will take 70%. This is not a favor. This is a professional business partnership. You are our partner, the absolute soul of this shop. Old Zhang was completely stunned. He stared at the beautifully printed, structured business proposal, utterly lost for words. He had spent his entire life working with plants and soil. He had never seen anything on this kind of scale before. I kept going. Nanik, please, let me finish. I have already come up with a name for our flower shop. We will call it Orchid Heart Pavilion. Our goal is not just to run a small flower shop. We want to build a major brand. In the beginning, we will focus on breeding and selling premium orchids. Down the road, we can expand into custom home gardening services, providing high-end clients with on-site garden design and maintenance. Later on, we can even establish our own massive orchid cultivation base, expanding the Orchid Heart Pavilion brand across the entire province, and eventually, the whole country.
Just think about it, Uncle John.
The orchids you grow with your own two hands, blooming on the balconies of thousands of homes, being admired and loved by countless people. Imagine how incredibly rewarding that would feel. This is not just a business. This is a calling. It is a life's work where your passion and true value can shine to the absolute fullest. Every single word I said struck a deep chord in old Zhang's heart. He looked at me, shock written all over his face. He originally thought I was just trying to repay a debt of gratitude by tossing some money his way, but he never expected me to lay out such a massive, grand blueprint for his future. He could see I was dead serious. I wasn't acting out of pity. I genuinely respected his skills and valued his worth. His hands trembled slightly as he ran his fingers over the business proposal. His eyes slowly welled up with tears. For a man, the ultimate dream in life isn't about how much money he makes. It's having his lifelong passion recognized and finally getting the chance to shine. After a long pause, he looked up, gave a firm nod, and said, "All right,
Jaishu, I'm with you on this.
Every single word was spoken with absolute conviction. In that moment, he was no longer just a retired gardener staying at home, but an entrepreneur about to launch his own empire. Everything with Langston Garden went incredibly smoothly. I mobilized all my connections and capital to secure a prime location for Old John in record time. It was right on the busiest commercial street, directly opposite our residential estate. The renovation crew got to work immediately, designing everything to the absolute highest standards. Old John basically lived at the construction site every day.
Watching his dream flower shop take shape piece by piece.
He looked like he had found a new lease on life, absolutely bursting with energy. Meanwhile, at the company, Xinshan Tech was rapidly gaining traction. Thanks to Li Wei and our core technical team, we were fast-tracking right onto the right path. We integrated Madong's premium channels and client base, combining them with our superior core technology. Before long, we had secured a solid foothold in the market. Everything seemed to be heading in the best possible direction. Yet, beneath this thriving surface, an unexpected undercurrent was quietly stirring within my own family. Ever since that day, my mother-in-law, Liu Yumei,
and Zhou Hao had indeed behaved themselves much more.
Lu Yumi stopped going out to play cards every day. Instead, she stayed home to cook,
clean up,
and was surprisingly polite to me. Zhou Hao actually ended up going to work at the logistics park, although he came home completely exhausted every single day, complaining and whining nonstop.
He surprisingly didn't
Throw him in the towel. I thought my father-in-law's ruthless methods had completely put them in their place, but I was dead wrong.
I underestimated their sheer greed and their deep-rooted, ugly nature.
That night, I had to work late because of an urgent project at the company, so I called Zhou Jing ahead of time and told her not to wait up for dinner.
It was 11 p.m. by the time I dragged my exhausted body back home.
As soon as I opened the door, I immediately sensed that the atmosphere in the house was off.
The living room lights were still on.
And Zhou Jing was sitting on the sofa, with her head down, her face hidden in the shadows.
A cup of water, long gone cold, sat untouched on the coffee table.
What's wrong? Why aren't you asleep yet?
I walked over to her
And asked softly, hearing my voice.
Zhou Jing's shoulders trembled slightly.
She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy, clearly having just been crying.
My heart instantly sank.
What happened?
I asked,
Sitting down, right next to her, and taking her ice-cold hands in mine, Zhou Jing stared at me,
her lips trembling, wanting to speak, but holding back.
Xuan, don't be afraid. I'm right here, I said, giving her an encouraging look. No matter what happens, we'll face it together. My words seemed to give her some strength. She took a deep breath and finally spoke.
This afternoon, my mom and brother came by.
My brow furrowed instantly. What did they want this time? They said my younger cousin got into a fight at school and severely injured the other kid. The other kid's family has some serious connections, so they refused to settle it out of court. They're insisting on involving the police and demanding $500,000 in compensation. Otherwise, they're going to put my cousin behind bars.
Zhou Jing's voice trembled slightly as she spoke.
My mom came to me in tears, begging, saying my uncle's family couldn't scrape up that kind of money, even if they sold everything they owned. She begged me to help them, no matter what. She swore it was just a loan, and that they would absolutely pay us back. Listening to this, I couldn't help but scoff inwardly. Here we go again. The exact same playbook, the exact same trap. Only this time, the story they made up was far more extreme and far more urgent. I stared at Zhou Jing, keeping my face completely expressionless. So, I asked calmly, what did you decide to do? Zhou Jing avoided my gaze. She looked down, whispering, I felt weak in the moment.
He's my cousin, after all.
I couldn't just stand by and watch his life be ruined. My mom and Ahao even got down on their knees and begged me, salaking, like their hearts were breaking. I lost my head for a second. Look,
And I agreed to help them.
hearing this, my heart sank. I really thought Zhou Jing had changed. I thought she had finally learned how to say no, but I was wrong.
The moment her family weaponized guilt against her,
She crumbled instantly. So you gave them the money? My voice was freezing cold.
Zhou Jing shook her head quickly.
A trace of lingering fear in her voice. No, but right after I agreed and was about to head to the bank to withdraw it, I suddenly thought of you. I remembered what Dad told us. I figured, for something this big, I really should discuss it with you first. So I told them. And I didn't have that much cash on hand.
And that I have to wait until tomorrow to go to the bank with you.
The second my mom heard that, her face fell. She snapped, saying I didn't want to help them at all, and even scolded me for turning my back on my own family the moment I got married. Ahao also called me cold-blooded and heartless, accusing me of leaving them to die.
they threw a massive fit and stormed off in a rage.
Zhou Jing looked up at me, her eyes filled with guilt and helplessness.
Xuan, am I completely useless?
Did I fall back into my old ways again? I really didn't know what to do at that moment. I was terrified that if I said no, we would hate me for the rest of their lives.
But when I agreed,
I felt like I was betraying you. Seeing her so consumed by guilt,
the slight chill in my heart slowly melted away.
it was replaced by a rush of complex emotions. Disappointment, yes, but mostly just pure heartache. I knew that breaking her free from the shackles of her toxic family wouldn't happen overnight. She needed time, and she needed absolute support. I gently pulled her into my arms. You did nothing wrong. You're just too kind. The fact that you thought to discuss it with me before handing over any money, that is already a huge step forward.
I patted her back. Leave this to me. I'll handle it.
I looked out at the dark night sky, my gaze turning ice cold and razor sharp.
6月瑶正好。
It seems the lesson I taught you wasn't enough. Since you don't know when to back off, then I will have to personally destroy every single one of your greedy delusions. The next day, I didn't go to the office. Instead, I had Zhou Jing call Yu Yumai. She told her that the money was ready, and that they should come over this morning to collect it. Zhou Jing looked anxious. Xuan, are you really going to give them the money? I chuckled softly. and gave his nose a playful little pinch.
Silly. Why would I ever do something that stupid? I'm just using this opportunity to show you and to teach them one final lesson. After this lesson, I guarantee they'll never dare to mess with me again.
Zhou Jing nodded, not quite understanding.
But he chose to trust me unconditionally. At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang right on cue.
Liu Yumi and Zhou Hao, like two flies catching the scent of blood, couldn't wait to barge right in.
The moment she stepped through the door, Liu Yumei plastered on a fake smile.
Zhou, oh, it's so wonderful that you're home too.
As she spoke, her eyes darted all over the room,
As if hunting for the bag of cash.
Zhu Hao, on the other hand, had this incredibly smug, entitled look on his face. He threw himself onto the sofa, completely making himself at home, as if we owed him the world. I completely ignored their attitude. I simply poured each of them a plain glass of water.
Mom, huh?
Have a seat. My voice was dead calm, showing absolutely no emotion.
Liu Yumi rubbed her hands together, practically salivating as she spoke.
Xiaohua, it's the money. Is it ready?
Your cousin really can't wait any longer. I gave a slow nod.
It's ready.
I reached under the coffee table, pulled out a thick manila envelope, and placed it right on the table.
Liu Yumi and Zhou Hao's eyes lit up instantly. The sheer greed in their eyes was completely undisguised.
Liu Yumi lunged forward, grabbing for the envelope.
But I gently held it down with a single finger. Mom, don't rush. I looked at her, smiling. 500,000 is no small sum, just to be safe.
I think we should get the paperwork out of the way first.
Paperwork? Liu Yumi froze. What paperwork? We're family. Why on earth do we need paperwork just to borrow some money?
Of course we do.
My smile didn't fade, but my eyes turned ice cold.
I prepared a loan agreement right here.
I reached to the side and pulled out 2 printed documents. They clearly state that the borrower is Uncle, and the guarantors are you and Zhou Hao. The loan amount is 500,000 yuan, with a monthly interest rate of 1%. It must be paid in full within 1 year. If you default, we will have the legal right to seize Uncle's house, as well as every single asset under the names of both guarantors. I slid the contracts right in front of them. Sign here, leave your thumbprints, and you can take this 500,000 yuan right now.
Instantly, a dead silence fell over the living room.
The smiles on Liu Yumi and Zhou Hao's faces completely froze. They stared at me as if looking at a monster, their eyes filled with utter disbelief.
Xuan, what is the meaning of this?
Liu Yumi was the first to shriek. Are you treating us like thieves? We are Zhou Jing's own mother and brother.
Zhou Hao slammed his hand on the table and stood up.
Listen here, Xu. Don't push your luck. We came here to borrow money. To sell our souls. I leaned back against the sofa, coldly watching their little performance. Too far. I'm just following proper legal procedures. Since you claim you'll definitely pay it back, then what's the issue with signing a contract? Or did you never intend to pay me back from the very beginning?
My words were like a sharp knife,
ripping right through their hypocritical facade. Their faces flushed red, and then turned pale with anger, unable to utter a single word for the longest time. Just then, Zhou Jing, who had remained silent all this time, finally spoke. She stood up and walked over to Liu Yumei and Zhou Hao. Her face was calm, but her eyes were incredibly firm. Mom,
好，许乱是外。
since you are borrowing money, you should act like proper borrowers. The money in this house was earned by Xian's hard work. It didn't just fall from the sky. I was foolish in the past, allowing you to take whatever you wanted from us. That's what enabled your terrible habits all this time, and it's the only reason Xinan has had to put up with so much of your abuse. But starting today, that ends now. She picked up the contract and shoved it right in front of them. If you two actually care about your cousin, then sign this contract. The second you sign, you'll get the money. No hesitation, no games. But if you don't sign, 就经跑, and said, emphasizing every single word, then don't you ever come crawling to me for money again. In this house, Xuan calls the shots now. His decision is my decision. Her words echoed with absolute finality. Liu Yumi and Zhou Hao stood there, completely dumbfounded. They never in a million years expected this.
究竟就还让为本坑铺里死死粉。
Meek, taking whatever abuse they threw at her. Ever stand up to them like this? The way she looked at them was stripped of all her past weakness in compliance, leaving only a cold, razor-sharp resolve. She was no longer the helpless daughter, or the pushover sister they could manipulate at will. She had finally found her strength, stepping up as a true wife ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with her husband. Ufumi pointed a trembling finger at Zhou Jing, shaking with pure, unadulterated rage. You ungrateful brat! You're throwing away your own mother for some worthless outsider?
Zhou Hao sneered, his face contorting with malice.
Fine, Zhou Jing. You think you're so tough?
Just you wait. There will come a day when you're begging us on your knees. They knew. They weren't getting a single penny today.
Causing any more of a scene would only humiliate them further.
Muttering a few final, empty threats, they turned to storm out. "Hold on," I called out, stopping them in their tracks.
I pulled out my phone
And tapped play on an audio recording.
It was a call I had made to a friend late last night.
My friend happened to be the captain of the city's criminal investigation division.
Hey, Long, do me a quick favor and look something up.
Is that kid from my brother-in-law's side, Li Minghao, really locked up for assault and battery?
A crystal clear voice answered from the other end of the line.
No way.
I just ran a check on our system. There hasn't been a single police dispatch record for anyone named Li Minghao in the entire city for the past week.
Who did you hear that from?
Once the recording finished playing,
Lu Yumi and Zhao Hao's faces turned completely pale as death. They looked like two choked chickens.
frozen on the spot, unable to move a muscle.
I put away my phone,
Staring at them coldly.
fabricating lies, and attempting to swindle a massive fortune. Do you have any idea what this is called? It's called fraud of 500,000. A massive sum. How many years in prison do you think that gets you?
Do you need me for you? Do you need me to look it up for you?
With a sudden thud, Zhou Hao's legs buckled,
And he collapsed straight onto the floor.
Lu Yumi's lips trembled.
but she couldn't utter a single word. Fear washed over them like a tidal wave, completely drowning them.
I stood up, walked over to them, and looked down on them from above.
Today, for Zhou Jing's sake, I'm letting you off the hook one last time. From now on, you'd better behave yourselves. If I ever catch you again harboring any of your greedy, wicked ideas. My voice was utterly devoid of emotion.
I guarantee that the next time we meet, it will be at the police station.
With that, I grabbed Zhou Jing's hand and walked straight into the bedroom.
Locking the door behind us,
Leaving those two desperate, terrified souls behind in the living room.
I knew that from this moment on, the twisted, toxic umbilical cord connecting us to them was severed forever.
And my family would finally find true peace. It felt like an eternity before the air in the living room began to flow again. Zhou Hao and Yu Yumi scrambled and crawled as they fled our home.
Looking like a pair of wretched, beaten dogs,
Zhou Jing leaned into my chest.
her body still trembling slightly.
But this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was the sheer exhaustion and relief that came with finally breaking free.
居然我在处还是
She whispered softly in my arms. To go to this extent against my own mother and brother? I pull him closer, wrapping my arms tight around him so he can feel my heartbeat. Steady and real.
No, I say, looking at the faint dents on the bedroom door left by their angry pounding.
My eyes are completely cold. You weren't being harsh. You were saving yourself.
And you were saving me too. You were saving our family.
When a wound has rotted to the very bone, if you don't find the courage to cut it out, it will eventually poison your entire body.
Today, you just did what any surgeon had to do.
Zhou Jing didn't say another word.
He just buried his face deeper into my chest. I knew he was still hurting inside. After all, that was the mother who gave him life and raised him, and the younger brother he watched grow up. This kind of severing is bound to bring excruciating pain.
But this pain is temporary.
It is a painful transition you have to go through. Once you get through it, there is a new life waiting. I didn't say anything else. I just held him in silence. That night, we didn't do anything.
We just fell asleep in each other's arms. I could feel how deeply and peacefully Filting slept.
It was the first time in 10 years he had slept so soundly.
Because he knew.
From now on, there would be no more late-night phone calls crying for money, no more relatives showing up out of nowhere to corner him, and no more using family guilt to hijack his life. He finally belonged to himself and to our little family. The days that followed were as calm and peaceful as a still lake.
Lu Yumi and Zhou Hao seemed to have completely vanished from our lives.
Not a single phone call.
Not a single text message.
I later heard from my father-in-law that they had a massive fight after they got back. Zhou Hao took out all his anger on Lu Yuma,
blaming her for her terrible ideas.
Not only did they fail to get any money, but they had backed themselves completely into a corner.
Yu Yumi now spent her days crying, weeping, and complaining to any relative who would listen.
He kept that moving Shoujing, calling her unloyal.
Then claimed that I, his son-in-law, was cruel and heartless. But our relatives weren't stupid. After this happened a few times, all they ever heard about was his pathetic begging for money. Eventually, everyone just started ignoring him. Surprisingly, Zhou Hao didn't quit his job at the logistics park. Maybe he was terrified of his father-in-law's wrath. Or maybe he was completely petrified by my final ultimatum. He actually started learning to earn his meager salary through honest, hard work. It was a good start, even though it had absolutely nothing to do with us anymore. My life's focus had completely shifted to Xinshang Technology and the grand opening of Langson Pavilion.
With Li Wei and the team managing the company, business was absolutely booming.
New orders and partnerships were constantly rolling in. Meanwhile, thanks to the hard work of old Zhang and myself, Langson Pavilion was finally ready for its grand opening. The weather that day was incredibly beautiful and clear. Zhou Jing and I had decorated the entire shop, making it look absolutely stunning. The entrance was filled with celebratory flower baskets, all sent by my business partners and close friends. Inside, exquisite orchids of various shapes and sizes were beautifully arranged across antique wooden shelves. Some were as elegant and pure as lotus flowers, while others were as vibrant as sunset clouds. A delicate, refreshing orchid fragrance filled the air.
我讲吧，我搬路糖树。
His hair neatly slicked back and his face glowing with energy. Staying at the entrance, he warmly welcomed the arriving guests, his genuine joy and pride radiating to everyone around him. He was no longer just the timid retired worker who used to live right across the hall. He was now the chief technical expert of Langson Pavilion, the very soul of this shop. Mr. Shi, Miss Zhou,
Thank you both so much.
Old Zhang tightly held my hand, and Zhou Jing's, his eyes welling up with tears. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd see a day like this. Don't mention it, Uncle Zhang, I said with a smile. I've earned every bit of this. It's your incredible skills that made this shop possible. We just did a little bit of the heavy lifting. 10:08 a.m. The auspicious hour has arrived. Amidst the enthusiastic applause and the roar of firecrackers, I personally pulled down the red cloth covering the Langson Yuan plaque. 3 bold, gold-embossed characters gleamed brilliantly under the sun. Just then, a black Audi A6 slowly pulled up in front of the store. The door opened, and a man wearing a Zhongshan suit, a hale and hearty figure, stepped out of the car. It was my father-in-law, Zhou Goha. He actually showed up in person today. In his hands, he carried a pot of orchids, completely different from any of the ones he had given me in the past. The leaves of this one were thick and lush, emerald green like pure jade, with strongly intertwined roots, bursting with vibrant life. Several flower spikes shot up proudly from the foliage, heavy with plump, ready-to-bloom buds. Even a complete amateur could tell this was an absolute masterpiece. He didn't look at me. Nor did he look at Zhou Jing. He walked straight up to old Zhang. The 2 elderly men locked eyes. Zhou Guo's gaze held a hint of critical scrutiny, where old Zhang remained calm and composed, his eyes shining with the ultimate confidence of a true master. This great general orchid represents 30 years of my hard work, Zhou Guha said slowly, his voice deep and steady. I'm leaving it with you today to serve as Leng Xingjuan's crown jewel. Do you have the confidence to make this old partner of mine bloom even more brilliantly than before?
Old Zhang carefully took the orchid.
As if holding a priceless heirloom, he examined it closely for a moment, then looked up, his eyes gleaming with sheer excitement. Rest assured, Mr. Zhou, within half a month, I guarantee it will be in full bloom, its fragrance drifting for miles. Finally, a faint smile of approval appeared on Zhou Guo's face. He gave a slow nod, and then he finally turned around to look at me. He gently patted my shoulder, without saying a single word, but his deep, knowing eyes spoke volumes, as if saying, once I handed you nothing but mud and withered roots, just so you could learn how to nurture them. The 4th, and now you have learned how to coax beautiful blossoms from those very roots. That is what true rebirth is all about. The grand opening of Langson Garden was a massive success. That legendary top-tier symbiodum orchid named the Great General, sent by Zhou Gohua, became our ultimate advertisement. Orchid enthusiasts flocked to our store from all over just to catch a single glimpse of its breathtaking beauty. Meanwhile, old Zhang, with his god-tier cultivating skills and encyclopedic knowledge of every orchid variety, quickly made a legendary name for himself in the community. Business at the shop exploded, far exceeding my wildest expectations. Those very orchids that I once looked down upon as my ultimate humiliation were now bringing me unimaginable wealth and prestige. This made me truly appreciate my father-in-law's profound wisdom and his painstaking efforts. Nothing in this world is inherently good or bad. It all depends on how you choose to see it and how you choose to use it. So, once your perspective shifts, everything else changes with it. Once everything at Langson Garden was running smoothly, I poured all of my energy back into the growth of Xinsheng Tech. We aggressively seized the massive market share left behind by Ma Dong. With our core technical team back on board, our research and development power surged to unprecedented heights. The entire company was thriving, surging forward with unstoppable momentum. But I knew this was only the beginning. Crushing someone like Ma Dong was nothing to brag about. He was merely a slightly aggressive fish in this merciless business ocean. Out there, in the deep, vast sea, lurked the real sharks and leviathans of the industry. If I wanted to become the ultimate king, I had to challenge far more powerful adversaries and conquer uncharted territories. And sooner than expected, that opportunity arrived one afternoon. During our company's strategic meeting, Li Wei broke a piece of news that made everyone's blood run hot. Mr. Xu, the municipal government just announced a massive smart city construction project. He placed a thick stack of documents under the projector, And this project covers everything from urban transit,
public safety, government affairs, medical care, and various other sectors. The total investment exceeds 5 billion yuan. The absolute core of this is building the City Brain data center,
along with it supporting smart security systems. And that happens to be the exact field where our company's core tech shines the most.
Instantly, the conference room erupted into a wave of hushed, excited gasps. A 5 billion yuan project. For a company like ours that just finished restructuring, into total assets of barely tens of millions. That number is absolute fantasy. If we can snag even the tiniest piece of this pie, it would be enough to launch our company into a massive leap forward. As for the competition, who are our rivals? I asked, refusing to let that massive figure cloud my judgment.
Li Wei's expression grew serious.
They are incredibly strong. He flipped to the next slide.
Then there, several household names appeared on the screen.
Industry titan, Huck Intelligence,
Type 东方星腾
and several long-established security firms in the province. They've all made it clear they are bidding on this. Compared to them,
We're just an unknown tiny startup.
instantly the fiery excitement in the room cooled into a heavy, tense silence. It was true. Compared to those giants,
Xishan technology was like a tiny wooden rowboat that had just put to sea.
while they were heavily armed aircraft carriers.
This battle looked entirely unwinnable. Looking down at the anxious yet hopeful faces around the table,
I slowly stood up.
Does a tiny rowboat always lose against an aircraft carrier? My voice wasn't loud, but it rang clearly in everyone's ears.
an aircraft carrier is massive. Its firepower is devastating, but it turns slowly. Its inertia is huge. But our boat is small.
We're agile, and we react fast. Our decision-making is lightning fast. They have deep pockets and powerful backing, but we have a superior core algorithm and the sheer guts to risk it all. My gaze swept across everyone in the room. For us, this project is a crisis. But more than that, it is our greatest opportunity. If we win, we skyrocket straight to the top. Our hardware is industry-leading.
Even if we lose, we have nothing to lose.
Worst-case scenario, we just start over from scratch. I've made up my mind. This smart city project,
We, Xinsheng Tech, must secure it.
my words were like a match, instantly igniting the entire conference room. Everyone's eyes blazed with a renewed, fierce determination. After the meeting, Zhou called me. Her voice sounded a bit off.
Xuan, are you busy right now?
Not really. I just finished a meeting. What's wrong? There was a brief silence on the other end of the line.
My aunt just
called me.
This aunt is Lu Yumi's older sister.
She told me my mom's health has been really bad lately. She's been crying at home every single day, saying we're unfilial, and claiming you can't tolerate her and are trying to drive her to her grave. Now while our relatives are whispering behind our backs, saying we forgot our roots once we struck it rich, and that we're abandoning our own mother. My aunt wants me to find some time to go back and see her and apologize to her. After all, we're mother and daughter, and there's no grudge that can't be forgiven.
I could hear that Zhou Jing's voice no longer held her past hesitation or conflict. Only a calm, matter-of-fact tone remained.
I didn't make the decision for her.
But simply asked,
So, how did you respond?
究竟投个地怪
I told my aunt. I said mom's failing health isn't because of us. That because of her own greed and scheming. We didn't abandon her. She's the one who tried to destroy our family time and time again. I also told her
How Siya treated our family over the past 10 years.
all the relatives saw it with their own eyes. Now, Xuan is just refusing to be their pushover anymore. How does that make it our fault? I told her that if they really think we're unfilial, fine, let them go ahead and sue us. Whatever financial support we legally owe them, we won't hold back a single penny. But as for what we don't owe, they won't get a single dime. And with that, I just hung up on them. Hearing Zhou explain everything so logically,
without a single trace of emotion, as she recounted the call.
a sudden warmth surged in my heart. My wife, she really has grown up. She's learned how to put on a suit of armor to protect our home and to guard the gentle soul inside her. I'm so proud of you, Zhu, I said from the bottom of my heart. A soft, unleaved chuckle came from the other end of the line. Honestly, this is the first time I've realized that speaking your mind and drawing clear boundaries could feel so incredibly liberating. Xuan, you don't have to worry. Just go all out for your career. I've got things handled at home. From now on, no amount of gossip will ever hurt me again. As I hung up, I looked out at the vast sky through the window, feeling an unprecedented surge of strength inside me.
My home front is secure.
My path ahead is clear. The storm of the Smart City project. Let it rage as fiercely as it wants. To win the Smart City bid, everyone at Xinsheng Tech shifted into absolute overdrive. We set up a dedicated task force, which I led personally. For an entire week, we worked day and night,
analyzing the bidding documents, dissecting our competitors' strengths and weaknesses, and tailoring the absolute best solution based on our unique technical advantages.
But the deeper we dug, the more we were hit by a profound sense of helplessness. The project was simply too massive.
It wasn't just a contest of technological prowess. It was a battle of capital,
Connections, industry standing,
and even political influence on every level. While our algorithmic solutions were indeed half a generation ahead of the industry giants, our shortcomings were just as glaring. We don't have any experience running large-scale projects, and our supply chain isn't nearly as mature as our competitors. Most importantly, we don't have any connections in the city government's upper ranks. We don't even know who the chief commander for this project is, let alone how they operate. It's like marching through a pitch-black forest. We don't know where the enemy is hiding. I have no idea where the road ends. Mr. Xu, we can't go on like this. Late one night, Li Wei walked into my office holding a cup of coffee. But why to cheer the stew? His face clouded with exhaustion and worry.
This proposal of ours, it's just a theoretical exercise.
We don't even understand the client's actual needs or pain points. How could we ever win the bid? I asked a few friends to dig around. And word is, the head of this project is the newly appointed deputy mayor, King Wudang. This guy is notoriously tough, strict, and partial, and completely immune to bribes. Anyone trying to pull strings or cozy up to him has been shut out completely. Getting to see him is practically impossible for us. I rubbed my aching temples, sensing just how incredibly difficult this was going to be. Strict and impartial, completely incorruptible. That's a double-edged sword. The good news is, everyone is on an equal playing field. Those companies wanting to win through shady backroom deals won't stand a chance. The bad news is, an underqualified small company like ours has no way of getting through the door to prove our strength. We have the skills to slay dragons. We can even get a glimpse of the beast. That's what's truly despairing. Just when I was completely out of options,
the face suddenly flashed through my mind. My father-in-law, Zhou Hua.
It suddenly hit me.
Perhaps in this seemingly impossible game of chess,
he is the only master outside the board who can guide me.
I didn't want him to pull strings for me. With his character, he would never help me sneak through the back door.
I just wanted to hear his perspective. This wise old man, who has seen through human nature and the ways of the world, might just offer a perspective I would never have thought of. Show me a way to break this deadlock. The next day, I didn't go to the office. I drove over to my father-in-law's house all by myself.
When Liumi saw me, her eyes darted away guiltily.
And her attitude became unusually submissive. I ignored her and walked straight into Zhou Kehua's study. He was wearing reading glasses, copying Wang Zexhi's classic calligraphy piece, the preface to the Orchid Pavilion. Seeing we walk in, he simply pointed to the chair opposite him, motioning for me to sit, and went right back to focusing on his calligraphy. The only sound in the entire study was the soft scratching of his brush against the rice paper. I didn't want to disturb him, so I just sat there, quietly, breathing in the soothing scent of ink in the air. Slowly, my anxious mind began to settle. Once he finished the piece, he finally set his brush down slowly and took off his glasses. About the company. Have you hit a rough patch? He got straight to the point. As if my visit today was entirely within his expectations. I nodded and explained everything about the Smart City project, from how it started to the dead end we are currently trapped in. I laid out every single detail for him. He listened, quietly, his face completely blank. Only when I finished did he finally pick up his teacup, gently blowing on the tea. Qin Weidong. He muttered the name, a complex look flashing in his eye, as if he were recalling the past. This name, I actually find it somewhat familiar. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. Dad, do you know him?
Zhou Hua shook his head.
No, but 20 years ago? Back when I was the factory director of a large state-owned plant in the Northeast, I heard of a young man by that name. Back then, the factory was on the brink of bankruptcy. The workers hadn't been paid for months. Everyone was in a state of panic. But then, this young man stepped up. At the time, he was just a deputy workshop director, but he had the guts to lead a team of technicians and swore a solemn oath to overhaul their technology. He practically lived in the workshop, not going home once, for 3 whole months. And somehow, he managed to crack a massive, long-standing technical bottleneck, bringing the factory's core product back to life and making it competitive again. He didn't just save the factory. He saved the livelihoods of thousands of workers. And I remember that young man's name was also Qin Weidong. As I listened to my father-in-law speak, the image of an unyielding and fearless young man rose before my eyes. Dad, what are you trying to say?
I mean, you've got him all wrong.
Zhou Hua looked at me, his gaze sharpening instantly. You think he's impartial and completely uncompromising just because he's rigid and cold? You're wrong. A self-made doer who climbed up from the absolute bottom despises nothing more than flashy tricks and empty theories.
The reason he keeps people at arm's length
isn't because he's arrogant, but because he refuses to waste his time listening to hollow, puffed-up boasts.
In his eyes, your current proposal is no different from any other company trying to suck up to him. All just trying to show off how great you are.
But what he actually wants to hear is, what real problem can you solve for me? My father-in-law's words hit me like a bolt of lightning, instantly clearing the fog in my mind.
I get it now. I completely get it. Our entire approach was wrong from the very beginning. We've been racking our brains to show Qing Weidong how advanced our technology is, how superior our algorithms are, but he doesn't care about any of that. As the administrator of this city,
all he cares about are the real, everyday pain points that plague his citizens. It's the gridlock during rush hour, with streets clogged bumper to bumper. It's the constant break-ins and thefts in run-down old neighborhoods.
It's the nightmare of waiting hours at the hospital just to see a doctor for a few minutes.
What he needs isn't some pie-in-the-sky project that only looks good on paper.
He needs a practical all-in-one package that can actually be implemented to solve these real-world problems. Thank you, Dad. I get it now.
I stood up, filled with excitement,
and bowed deeply to Joe Koa.
He waved his hand dismissively
and pulled down a dusty document box from the very top of the bookshelf.
He opened the box and, from inside,
pulled out an old, yellowed black and white photo. The photo showed a group of young people in work overalls, standing proud and full of energy in front of an old machine tool. He pointed to the young man with the brightest smile. This was my young apprentice who did technical innovation with me back in the day. Later, he followed Qing Weidong all the way down south and became his right-hand man. Come to think of it, we haven't seen each other in 20 years. He pulled an unsent letter out of the box and handed it to me, along with the photo. Go find this man. Give him the letter and the photo. He might just be willing to meet you. With trembling hands, I took the letter and the photo. I knew these thin pieces of paper were the ultimate game-changing chess piece my father-in-law was giving me to break this deadlock. I clutched the letter and the old photo tightly,
my palms drenched in sweat.
This wasn't just a letter or a photo. This was 20 years of favors and a lifetime of wisdom from my father-in-law, Zhou Gehua. A secret path he had paved for me, leading straight to the core of power. I didn't waste a single second and immediately mobilized every single resource at my disposal to search for the young man in the photo. His name, written on the back of my father-in-law's envelope, was Fang Jin. I hired a highly professional investigation agency, and in less than one day, I had his complete file. The results sent a shiver down my spine. Fang Jin is currently the deputy director of the Haidong Municipal Government Office.
But more importantly, he also serves as the executive deputy leader of the Haidong Smart City Project Leadership Group.
He is the most trusted deputy of the commander-in-chief, Qing Weidong. It turned out that game-changing chess piece had been sitting right at the center of the board all along. I just hadn't seen it until now. Following the address in the file, without making an appointment beforehand, I drove straight to the slightly run-down staff compound where Fang Jin lived. I chose not to meet him in his office, because I knew, in a place like that, he would only see me as CEO Xu of Xinsheng Technology. But at home, he might just see the younger generation of an old friend. I waited downstairs at his building until 7 in the evening. A black official car pulled into the compound. Fang Jin stepped out. He looked to be in his mid-40s. Refined and scholarly, but there was an unmistakable weariness written across his face. I stepped forward, bowing slightly under his wary gaze. Hello, Director Fan. My name is Xu An. I'm Zhou Goua's son-in-law. At the mention of Zhou Goua's name,
Fang Jin froze instantly.
The caution in his eyes melted into deep confusion and searching. Director Zhou? He asked tentatively. That old title carried the heavy weight of a bygone era. Without another word, I handed him a faded, yellowed photograph and a pristine, carefully preserved letter with both hands. Fang Jin's eyes locked onto the photograph, and he completely froze. His fingers gently traced his younger self in the picture, smiling so brightly, and his eyes welled up with tears almost instantly. With trembling hands, he unfolded the letter. It wasn't long. My father-in-law's handwriting was sharp and strong, just like the man himself. There wasn't a single mention of the project, and no requests for favors. The entire letter was just an elder's warm greetings and fond memories of a junior he had once placed so much hope in. He reminisced about the sleepless nights they spent together in the factory, fighting to crack those technical bottlenecks. He asked Fang Jin if his current job was too draining, and if he was keeping healthy. He wrote that he was getting old now, spending his days tending to flowers, playing chess, and living a very peaceful life. Only at the very end of the letter did he mention me. He wrote, "My son-in-law Xian is a good kid. He has that same stubborn, relentless drive you had when you were young. He's a solid, down-to-earth tech guy too. He's hit a bit of a rough patch lately and might come looking for you. If it's not too much trouble, there's no harm in hearing him out. But if you can't, don't force yourself.
After all, we were once mentor and apprentice, so there's no need for formal pleasantries. Fangjin read the letter very slowly, hanging on every word. When he finished, he fell silent for a long, long time. By the time he finally looked up, tears were glistening in the eyes of this middle-aged man who had spent decades weathering the storm of politics. Is he doing okay? He asked, his voice cracking.
He's doing great, I answered softly.
He goes to the park every single day to play chess with his old buddies. He's full of life.
Fangjin let out a long, heavy sigh of relief, as if a massive boulder weighing on his chest for 20 years had finally been lifted.
He carefully folded the letter, tucked the photo inside, and slid them safely into his breast pocket. Then, he looked up at me, his eyes carrying a completely new, much warmer and closer look. Come on, let's go upstairs and talk. He led me into his apartment. It wasn't large, and the decor was quite modest, but the place was absolutely spotless. His wife made us some tea, and then tactfully headed back to her room, leaving us to talk. Yeah, it was just the two of us in the living room. Xuan, I've heard of your company, Xingsheng Tech. For this smart city project bidding, you guys have thrown your hat in the ring as well.
Fanyan got straight to the point.
Without beating around the bush.
Yes, I nodded.
But we've hit a major roadblock. Fangjin looked at me, his expression turning serious. Are you hoping I'll put in a good word for you with Mayor Qin? I shook my head. No, I didn't come here today to beg for a favor. I just wanted to ask you about a puzzle we simply can't seem to solve. That got Fangjin's attention. What kind of smart city does Mayor Qin actually want? My question caught Fangjin completely off guard. He clearly didn't expect me to ask something like that. He fell silent, contemplating for a long moment before he finally spoke. Slowly. Well, it looks like my master was right. You really are a sharp one. So, I'll give it to you straight. Mayor Chen doesn't care about a proposal that just looks good on paper, or one boasting the most advanced technology, because giants like Wook Intelligence and Dongfang Communication can deliver all of that. In fact, they can do it 100 times better than you. What he actually wants is a solution that can truly solve real-world problems. A solution to the most stubborn, headache-inducing urban governance issues right here in Haidong City. His words aligned perfectly with my father-in-law's prediction. My heart began to race. Director Fang, could you be a bit more specific?
Fangjin stood up,
Looked over to the window, and gazed out at the warm, flickering lights of the old residential neighborhoods. He seemed to be muttering to himself. Yeah, his words were clearly meant for me. Do you know what is giving Mayor Qin the biggest headache right now? It's not the gridlock in the downtown area, nor is it the planning of the new district. It's this very old town right beneath our feet. Hundreds of thousands of residents live here. The buildings are crammed together. The roads are painfully narrow, and the fire safety infrastructure is ancient. Every single safety hazard is a ticking time bomb. Just last month, a fire broke out in an alley right next to us. Because the alley was so narrow, Mayor Qin rushed to the scene the moment he heard the news. Standing there for the entire night, he came back and told me, if our so-called smart city can't even preserve the very last shred of hope for a single life, then its smartness is utterly worthless. As he said this, Fangjin's voice grew heavy with a deep, lingering sorrow. I stood there, frozen to the spot, as if struck by a bolt of lightning. I finally understood. Where did we go wrong? Just like all the other bidding companies, we were all looking up at the stars. We were all painting a grand, glorious future. But we completely forgot to bend down and look at the people living in the darkest corners of the city. Theirs is the most real, the most urgent pain. I understand now. I stood up and bowed deeply to Fangjin once again. Thank you so much. Director Fang, your words today are worth a fortune. I won't let you down. I certainly won't let Director Zhou down. Fangjin looked at me, a relieved smile appearing on his face. This is all I can do for you. The final presentation for the project is in 3 days. I'll secure a 15-minute presentation slot for you. Whether you can seize this opportunity is entirely up to you. Stepping out of Fangjin's house. The night wind was freezing against my face, but a fire was blazing hot in my heart. I knew we had found the only key of trust that could unlock Qin Fudang's heart. By the time I got back to the office, it was already 12 midnight. The entire task force office was still brightly lit. Li Wei and all the core members were gathered around the conference table, every single one of them with bloodshot eyes and anxiety written all over their faces. We were still making final revisions to that grand, hollow proposal. I walked in and slammed my briefcase down on the table. Everyone, stop what you're doing. Everyone looked up at me. Think. I scanned the room and then said, one word at a time. Every single plan we've made before is completely scrapped. What? Everyone was stunned. Li Wei stood up, visibly agitated. Mr. Shi, what did you just say? We've poured our blood, sweat, and tears into this for an entire week. I know. I said, looking at him calmly. But we've been heading in the wrong direction from the very start. We need to scrap everything and start over. I didn't explain much, and simply relayed everything Fang Jian told me about the Old Town fire, word for word. I projected that grim, gut-wrenching accident report onto the big screen. Listen up, everyone. This is our real battlefield. We don't need to go head-to-head with Hoik Intelligent over whose system is more comprehensive or whose coverage is wider. What we need to do is push the limits in the one area they all look down on and can't solve. We aren't trying to build some all-inclusive smart city. We're building a safe haven for the Old Town. One that actually saves lives. My words threw the entire conference room into a long, heavy silence. The shock and confusion in everyone's eyes slowly turned into deep, solemn reflection. Then, their eyes ignited with an unprecedented spark of hope. They were all top-tier engineers, and instantly saw exactly what I was aiming for. Instead of throwing ourselves against a brick wall on their strongest battlefield, we would carve out a brand new one. A battlefield we ruled. We would drive a dagger straight into the enemy's heart. I agree with Mr. Xu. Li Wei was the first to stand up. The fire of excitement was burning in his eyes once again. Instead of building a massive, mediocre system, we build a hyper-focused, absolute masterpiece. This is what Xinsheng Tech is all about. Screw it, let's do this. So if we don't sleep for 3 days, let's give it everything we've got. Their fighting spirit was completely set ablaze. The next 72 hours were pure hell for Xinsheng Tech. But they were also 72 hours of pure hope. We scrapped every other module. We poured every single byte of computing power and every ounce of manpower into just one thing, the Safe Old Town project. We moved at breakneck speed to build a digital 3D model of the old district. Accurate, down to the very last wire, and every single fire hydrant. We designed a brand new ultra-low-power smart sensor network based on the Internet of Things. It could monitor smoke levels and temperatures in these ancient houses in real time, detecting gas leaks and even circuit overloads. We developed a cutting-edge AI algorithm. It could pinpoint the exact location and severity of a fire within 0.1 seconds and automatically map out the fastest rescue route. It could even take control of every traffic light along the way, opening up a green corridor of life for the fire trucks. This was no longer just some slideshow presentation. This was a fully functional, completely operational, life-saving system built for the real world. 3 days later, conference room number 1 in Haidong City was packed to the brim. The final pitch for the Smart City project had officially begun. Qi Wendong and the panel of experts sat at the judges' table, their faces completely blank.
Okay, Intelligent.
Industry giants like Dongfang Telecom took the stage one after another to present their proposals. Their presentations were as grand and flawless as always, tacked with flashy animations and high-end concepts that practically made your head spin. Yet, the judges' table remained completely unimpressed. A few times, Qin Weidong even let slip a subtle, barely noticeable look of disappointment. Finally, it was our turn. I was the very last one to go up. As I, the owner of a completely unknown tiny company, walked onto the stage, murmurs rippled through the audience. Some even smirked with pure contempt. I completely ignored them. I walked up to the podium, but I didn't open the presentation I had prepared. Instead, I simply projected a photo of the Old Town fire onto the massive screen. The sit-tained, blackened walls, the hopeless, charred ruins, instantly grabbed everyone's undivided attention. Distinguished leaders, respected experts, before I begin my presentation, I'd like to ask everyone to look closely at this photo. Just 1 month ago, right inside this very building in this picture, 3 living, breathing human beings were taken from us forever by a devastating fire. And the smart city we are discussing here today, if it cannot prevent tragedies like this from happening again, then all of its so-called intelligence is utterly meaningless. My opening remarks made the entire hall fall dead silent. For the first time, Chen Weidong lifted his tired eyes and locked a sharp, intense gaze right onto me without giving him a single second to catch his breath. I immediately pulled up our simulation system on the big screen, a real-time safe old town system our team built in just 72 hours. Now, let me demonstrate to all of you exactly what would have happened if our system had been deployed that day. I hit the enter key. Instantly, a bright red dot representing the fire flashed on the 3-dimensional map on the screen. Almost at the exact same moment, a piercing alarm blared from the system. In less than 1 second, the precise location of the fire, the severity level of the flames, and the exact number of people trapped inside were all clearly labeled and mapped out. At the same time, the absolute best rescue route was instantly plotted, and every single traffic light along the way turned green. In the corner of the screen, a countdown timer is ticking away at lightning speed. Based on our model's calculations, the startable from the moment a street alarm triggers to when the first fire truck arrives on scene, our system can slash that rescue time from 15 minutes down to just 4. Those 11 minutes are literally the difference between life and death. And to make all of this a reality, we don't need tens of billions of dollars in investment. Nor do we need some revolutionary sci-fi technology. All we need is an algorithm that's smart enough, practical enough, and a heart that genuinely wants to do something real for this city and for every single soul living here. I finished my pitch and bowed deeply to the panel of judges. The entire hall fell dead silent. Everyone in that room was deeply, profoundly shaken by what they had just seen,
They were no longer looking at some cold, lifeless technical proposal.
but a vision deeply rooted in human care and driven by a profound reverence for human life.
King Weidong stood up.
He didn't say a word. He simply raised his hands, leading the room in applause. The applause was sparse at first, but quickly it grew, echoing louder and louder until it thundered through the entire hall. I knew right then, in this ultimate showdown, we had won. The bidding results were announced that very afternoon. There is zero suspense. New Life Technology, the dark horse that came charging out of nowhere, had won this war in the most unbelievable way. We didn't land the entire $5 billion project, but we secured the absolute crown jewel, the construction rights for the City Brain Data Center, along with a complete smart security system upgrade for all of Haidong City. The total contract value? A staggering $2 billion. The news hit like a bombshell, sending massive shockwaves through the entire industry. The executives at Hookah Intelligent and Eastern Telecom could barely believe their ears, but couldn't wrap their heads around it. How could their supposedly perfect proposals lose to a completely unknown, no-name startup? Lose to a young kid who did nothing but tell a 15-minute story? But got the answer soon enough. Because, in the official press release, Mayor Qin Weidong personally praised our proposal with 16 powerful words. He started with, "Rising from the humblest beginnings, caring deeply for the people, a vital asset to the nation, and staying clear-headed through the noise." Those 16 words carry far more weight than any technical specification. They announce the arrival of a brand new era, an era where we no longer just look at capital and connections, but one that truly values hard work and innovation. Xinjiang Tech became an overnight sensation. Our company's valuation skyrocketed by more than 10 times overnight. Countless partnership offers and investment proposals flooded in like snowflakes. I kept my promise. Every core member of the project received massive bonuses and early-stage company shares. The entire office turned into a sea of absolute joy. On the night of our celebration banquet, everyone had way too much to drink. Li Wei threw his arms around me, sobbing like a baby. "Mr. C,
We actually did it.
I patted him on the back, my own eyes welling up with tears. Yeah, we did it. From being buried in debt and humiliated at my own door as a bankrupt millionaire to standing here today as the rising star at the absolute peak of this city's business world. This road, it was just too painful, too hard. But thank God, I never gave up. When the celebration banquet ended, I didn't go home, reeking of alcohol. I drove over to my father-in-law's house with Zhou Jing. It was already late into the night, but the light in his study was still on. It was as if he had been waiting for me this whole time. I gently placed the heavy, winning contract onto his desk. He didn't even look at it. He just looked up, quietly staring at me. His eyes were incredibly calm, as if he had foreseen all of this long ago. He reached into his pen holder and pulled out a calligraphy brush he had used for decades. The wooden shaft was worn smooth and shiny from years of handling. He handed the brush over to me. This brush has been with me my entire life. I used it to sign documents that changed the lives of thousands of people, and to write down countless reflections and moments of quiet confidence in the dead of night. Today, I am passing it on to you. He looked at me, his eyes filled with high hopes and a deep, silent trust. Xuan, you must remember this. Power, capital, and fame, they are all just tools. What really matters is the hand holding the pen and the heart guiding your stroke. Never forget why you started this journey in the first place. Stay true to yourself, and you will always find your way. Holding the brush that still carried the warmth of his hand, I nodded heavily. Dad, I'll remember. As I stepped out of my father-in-law's house, the first pale light of dawn was breaking on the horizon. A new day was beginning. Joji and I walked home, hand in hand. As the morning breeze swept over us, it dispelled the scent of alcohol on me and carried the sweet, gentle scent of her hair. Xuan. She suddenly stopped, turning around to face me. Her face held a hint of shyness, glowing with a tender light I had never seen before. There's something I want to tell you. What is it? She took my hand, placing it gently on her flat stomach. A new life is starting to grow. Right here. We're going to be a mom and dad. My mind went completely blank with a loud buzz. Everything stopped. All the success, flute, all the joy, paled in comparison to this single moment. I knelt down, pressing my ear gently against her belly. I could almost hear a tiny, powerful heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump.
It was the most beautiful music in the world.
The proof of our love, hope for the future, the truest voice of our hearts.
I stood up.
颇有就近，太里益他的傲子。
Tears finally spilled over, completely out of my control. I looked up at the morning sun breaking through the clouds,
Its golden light bathing the entire city.
wrapping me in its warmth.
I thought back to that half-dead orchid in the stone pot, the one that disappeared long ago.
I thought of my past self. So foolish, so incredibly naive. I remembered what my father-in-law once told me. To grow an orchid, you must first tend to its roots.
It turns out, those 10 years of silent endurance and suffering,
That bone-deep pain and agonizing struggle,
All of it was just to prepare me for today. To allow a once fragile tree like me to sink its roots as deep as they could go, so that after weathering the most violent storms, I could stand tall in the brilliant sunshine, blooming with the most beautiful flowers, and bearing the sweetest fruit. I held my wife close. Feeling the continuation of our bloodline, I knew, right then and there, that my life was finally, truly complete.
and the new era that belongs to me,
The era that belongs to our family
has only just begun.